Chapter 1350. In the Supercluster Alliance's joint conference room, many leaders were having a heated discussion. Ever since the three universal civilizations announced the universal war mobilization, the leaders of the various civilizations had put down their other work and treated it as their top priority. They actively asked the three universal civilizations about the situation of the foreign enemy. However, due to the importance of this matter, there were too many civilizations that were eager to find out more information. The three universal civilizations only gave a unified reply, briefly explaining the situation of the information entanglement. They claimed that they wanted to control the number of people who knew about it and said that it was not convenient to disclose the enemy's information for the time being. Therefore, the other civilizations knew almost nothing about the enemy. However, even if some civilizations were usually dissatisfied with the three universal civilizations, they would still follow the instructions of the three universal civilizations and cooperate with the strategic deployment when facing an external war. After all, the three universal civilizations were the supreme rulers, and their determination to protect the safety of the explored universe was unquestionable. At the same time, they were also the pillars of the galactic society. The various civilizations did not object to the three universal civilizations having unified command during wartime. Even the Supercluster Alliance did not dare have any objections. A Supercluster leader knocked on the table and said loudly, "The invasion of a foreign civilization is not small." For some reason, the three universal civilizations did not reveal the enemy's background. However, for them to make such a big fuss, it's obvious that they have met a strong enemy. According to the attitude of the three universal civilizations, it's most likely a mature universal civilization this time. It's not something those natives can compare to, another guessed. Everyone's expressions were rather heavy. This was not the first time the explored universe had dealt with an unknown civilization. In history, the development of new star fields would occasionally happen. The most recent example was the development of the flickering world, and the Kundi race war was similar. However, the natives and the universal civilizations were worlds apart, and the intensity of the war was on a completely different level. The universal civilizations in the unexplored universe were basically the overlords of an area. This was not a small fight when fighting the natives but an equal galactic war. They no longer had a 100% chance of winning like when teaching the natives a lesson, and the galactic society had a chance of being destroyed. The three universal civilizations had adopted a defensive posture in their base camp, so they were obviously not the ones who took the initiative to attack. There was a high chance that they were the ones being invaded. This made the leaders of the supercluster civilizations feel that something was wrong. No one wanted to start a war in their own territory. That way, even if they won, their territory would suffer huge losses. However, the three universal civilizations had adopted a defensive strategy, which meant that they were likely at a disadvantage, causing them to only be able to resist the invasion passively. The three universal civilizations' conservative strategy has exposed their lack of confidence. We should prepare a way out. If the three universal civilizations become losers, we have to think of a way to protect our civilization. The leader of the Star Arc sect said solemnly. In the eyes of these superiors, nothing was inevitable. They would never believe that the three universal civilizations would never be defeated or destroyed. They had to consider every possibility and plan ahead. It's a pity that the three universal civilizations don't disclose information about this foreign enemy. We can't analyze their social structure, political orientation, and attitude. Someone shook their head. It seems that we can only learn about this foreign civilization when the war starts. Then, we can make a decision based on the actual situation. Before that, we can only arrange the tinder warehouse, the Starstreak leader said. After discussing for a while, one of the three kings of Modo suddenly spoke in a low voice. Speaking of which, this might be a chance for us to break the deadlock. Hearing this, the eyes of the leaders of the supercluster flickered. They stayed in the explored universe, and their development had always been restricted by the three universal civilizations. Only external forces could break the balance. Their previous attempt at the flickering world had failed, and although the Beyond Grade A Association had potential, it did not seem to be of much use now. However, external enemies were the biggest variable, and it was a good opportunity to change the situation. The Star Arc leader pinched his chin and slowly said, "The most ideal situation is for the three universal civilizations and the foreign civilization to both be heavily injured. We can take over and rule the galactic society. Of course, they will be on guard against us. If this path doesn't work, we can also retreat while the war is going on. The three universal civilizations won't have the strength to stop us then. We can take our civilization and migrate to a distant area, become the new rulers, eat resources, and develop freely. We won't be restricted and suppressed like today." Everyone's eyes lit up, and they were a little tempted. As the saying went, one would rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. The Supercluster Alliance had been in second place for too long, and they were beaten by the three universal civilizations every day. If there was no external interference, they would never have a chance to turn the tables and would always be inferior to the three universal civilizations. If they could get rid of the restrictions, a great migration could be a choice. This time, the Star Arc leader changed the topic. "However, we don't have any information about the enemy now, so it's not suitable for us to make a decision. The three universal civilizations will most likely be on guard against us, forcing us to be the main force to reduce our strength and make us lose our threat. Therefore, we still have to see how the war goes." The leaders nodded with subtle expressions. Currently, the enemy had yet to attack, so it was naturally impossible for the various civilizations to unite. Selfishness was inevitable. War had always been sudden, and the announcement of the three universal civilizations spread throughout the galaxy, shocking the players. "Suddenly, there's going to be a war? I haven't even brushed my teeth yet. Didn't they say that the main storyline was the rise of a Beyond Grade A country? Why did it suddenly become a galactic war? TSK, I got the main storyline wrong again. I really can't guess this version. Actually, all of this can be traced. It's just that the level of intelligence we have is not high enough, so we can't get the inside story. We can only analyze the surface." A large number of players on the forums were shocked, but after the shock, most of them quickly became excited. "War? That's good. I can participate in the main storyline again." As a group that wished for the world to be in chaos, the players welcomed war. After the three universal civilizations and the association became good friends again, many players could only operate the black markets to farm daily items. Although they were very free, they did not have a main storyline goal, so they were more or less bored. Now that a universal war was about to break out, perhaps the largest war they had seen so far, most of the players could not wait. At this time, Han Shao also issued a conscription order to the army players, summoning all the combat-ready soldiers of the army to the flickering world on standby. Under Black Star's call, the tens of millions of army players almost all responded, dropping the black market missions in their hands and gathering toward Black Star Palace from all over the world. Flickering World, Dawn Star Cluster, Border Stargate Station. Civilian spaceships of various styles lined up in front of the Stargate. Under the supervision of the Red Empire fleet, they maintained order and entered the Stargate in batches. These were all galactic residents who responded to the migration and were leaving the flickering world on a large scale. Basically, all the galactic travel companies spontaneously assisted in the migration, mobilizing their ships to transport batch after batch of galactic residents out of the border. They responded to the call and also took the opportunity to make a fortune with the soaring demand for flights. Currently, the galactic flights did not consider comfort, only passenger capacity. Unless they chose the VIP cabin that was many times more expensive, they could not expect to receive any special treatment. In a large travel spaceship, countless galactic residents squeezed in the cabin hall. One could see all kinds of races there. These were all ordinary passengers, most of whom were chatting with their companions. There were many worried people, and the hall was noisy. The storms have been too frequent recently. Those higher-ups have been causing trouble, making us restless. A universe human could not help but complain. A person beside him had a dissatisfied expression and said angrily, "Who said it isn't?" Some time ago, the three universal civilizations were in a confrontation with the Beyond Grade A Association. I thought something big was going to happen, and it was finally resolved. Now, there's going to be a war. Since it has already happened, let's not complain so much. A well-dressed passenger sighed and said, "I only hope that this migration to the inner star field can guarantee our safety. As long as the three universal civilizations can stop the enemy in the border star field, we shouldn't have to worry. No matter how fierce the battle is, it won't be able to threaten us," another passenger said. "It's hard to say. In the past, when we encountered foreign civilizations, the three universal civilizations did not let us migrate on a large scale. The enemy this time is probably very strong. I hope the three universal civilizations can be more reliable. Otherwise, the inner star fields won't be safe," someone said worriedly. Everyone in the cabin was anxious, and the more they talked, the more worried they became. Other than personal safety concerns, many people were also worried about their daily lives. The people in the border star fields have all migrated to the inner star field. It should be crowded, and daily necessities will be more scarce. The prices will definitely rise. Sigh, it wasn't easy for me to save up some money. I don't know how long it can last. I hope my job opportunities won't be affected. As long as I don't go to the front lines, I'm willing to do any work." Many passengers sighed. At this time, something suddenly happened outside the window, attracting everyone's attention. There was a long queue in front of the Stargate, and the Stargate nearby was deserted. However, at this time, fleets suddenly sailed out of the Stargate and arrived in the flickering world. The armor of the ships had the symbols of different Beyond Grade A organizations. The next moment, these fleets turned into dense streams of light and headed in the opposite direction of the refugee fleet, heading toward the war zone. Those are the fleets of the Beyond Grade A Association. The passengers watched as the fleet disappeared from their sight, and the expressions of some of them suddenly became strange. Among the refugees, there was no lack of galactic residents who had criticized the association online during the confrontation between the three universal civilizations and the association. When they saw this scene, they had mixed feelings. Unexplored universe, interception zone. A large number of mechanical strongholds were lined up in the starry sky, and the orbit formed by the space stabilization anchor extended out, covering the route of the World Tree exploration team. The construction efficiency of the three universal civilizations was astonishing. In just a few days, they had formed the prototype of the defense circle, forming a war zone here as the front line to intercept the World Tree. In the past few days, the three universal civilizations had been laying space stabilization tracks along the exploration team's route all day long, and the range was getting larger and larger. They had already discovered that the World Tree had tried to create wormholes in different locations many times, but they were all interfered with by the space stabilization anchor, and ultimately failed. In the temporary base, Simon and the other commanders stayed in the battle staff room and discussed softly in front of the tactical star map. Han Shao and many Beyond Grade as listened from the side. After the meeting, Han Shao brought Kasuyi, Kant, and a dozen other Beyond Grade as to the interception zone. They sat down while understanding the current situation. There were many territories of Beyond Grade A organizations in the flickering world, and they were already preparing for war. There were many officers, so there was no need for the leaders of the organizations to keep an eye on them. Other than the members of the association, there were also many direct beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations. They were also here to prevent the World Tree from sending beyond grade as over. According to the statistics, the other party has already tried to open a wormhole channel 5 times. The coordinates are getting farther and farther away, and the last time, they are already close to the edge of the space stabilization orbit. Simon pointed at the star map and said solemnly, "The coordinates chosen by the other party next time should be very far away, and it might be outside our observation range. The defense circle is not complete yet. Black Star, we still need your help." "I'll try my best." Han Shao nodded. Laying down the space stabilization orbit could only delay the teleportation location of the World Tree a little, but it could not cover the route left behind by the exploration team over countless years. As long as the World Tree moved the teleportation coordinates far away, it would be able to throw the new exploration team over sooner or later. If the new World Tree exploration team was outside their observation range, it would be more troublesome. The other party could take a big detour, and the three universal civilizations' defense circle had not been completely built yet, so the probability of intercepting them was limited. The best way now was to rely on Destiny's Child's intelligence channels to locate the location of the subsequent exploration team and intercept them to prevent any fish from escaping the net. The premise was that the subbodies of the World Tree had this information, or else Destiny's Child would not be able to obtain it. However, this channel was very hidden, and the World Tree should not be aware of the problem. They would still use the power of the diviners to solve the problems for the exploration team. Beep beep beep. At this moment, Han Zhao's communicator suddenly rang. The room immediately fell silent. Everyone stopped talking and looked at Han Zhao. Han Zhao took out his communicator and looked at it. It was a message from Oathkeeper. After reading the content, his eyes flashed and he pondered. The World Tree has successfully opened the wormhole, and the new batch of exploration teams has arrived. They are 4 days away from the furthest space stabilization node. Everyone, we have to fight the other party. Hearing this, everyone's pupils constricted. Although they were mentally prepared, they were still feeling heavy when they officially fought the World Tree army. Only Han Shao could treat it calmly in the room. Chapter 1351. In the vast starry sky, a spatial fold appeared out of thin air and spun faster. It quickly turned into a wormhole, and hundreds of thousands of World Tree battleships sailed out. They're finally here. In the command room of the main ship, a creature that looked like a stick insect stood with his arms crossed. Judging from his attire, he was a high-ranking officer with a series of medals hanging on his chest. Orwell, the World Tree military commander, belonged to the External Combat Guidance Group. This was a talent pool formed by the elite mid-level commanders of the World Tree. This person was in charge of exploration, infiltration, intelligence theft, and other special operations missions all year round. He was currently in charge of the 274th Exploration Corps, which was also the fleet that had been sent here. His skin was like a leaf, and his veins were clearly visible. They flowed with an emerald green light, and he looked like a plant that had turned into a spirit. This was one of the World Tree's blessed races, the Green Demon. Not all races that were devoured by the World Tree were qualified to become blessed races. Blessed races were elite races that had been endowed by the World Tree. Like a beyond grade A race, they had an extremely high super awakening rate, as well as special talents and a natural connection with the World Tree. Orwell fiddled with the medal on his chest and slowly ordered, "All units pay attention. According to the plan, split up and take a detour to the navigation target. Try your best to avoid the enemy fleet that you might encounter. Our goal is to reach our destination, not to be in a stalemate with the enemy's intercepting forces." The previous few wormhole passages had been interfered with by the space stabilization anchor and had not been able to teleport them over, causing the 274th Exploration Corps to be on standby for a few days. The World Tree naturally guessed the strategy of the three universal civilizations and knew that this unknown civilization wanted to stop them in this area and not let them reach their territory. Therefore, the World Tree decided to let the exploration team split up and take a detour. With hundreds of thousands of exploration ships, every additional route would increase the number of teleportation coordinates for the World Tree. As long as the opponent's space stabilization orbit was not blocked in time, they could slowly explore until they reached the other party's territory. This method was time-consuming and energy-consuming, but the World Tree did not lack patience. The method was simple, crude, and effective. If one path was blocked, they could just take a longer detour next time. Sooner or later, they would be able to infiltrate the enemy's interception net. Their advantage was that they did not care about losses, and they had enough capital to try and make mistakes. The thing they were least afraid of was a tug-of-war. Under Orwell's orders, the hundreds of thousands of battleships scattered in all directions, like flowing lights scattering from the heavens, rapidly disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, Orville's subordinates swaggered forward along the route of the previous exploration team. Although the executive officers believe that this civilization is suspected to be the home of the previous outsider, there's no way to confirm it at the moment. If it's not, we don't know if there's any individual power here. Orwell narrowed his eyes and casually glanced at a figure who was resting with his eyes closed in the corner of the command room. The World Tree had specially sent a Holy Tree emissary to follow the ship. If they encountered enemy intercepting troops, they would act according to the situation. Their goal was to force out the individual strength of this unknown civilization. It did not matter even if they were sacrificed. 3 days later, a small fleet of the Arcane Church searched along the path of the exploration team. The captain was connected to the command channel, listening to the frequent reports from other troops with a serious expression. At present, we have intercepted a total of 7,200 enemy ships. We have discovered that the enemy is taking detours, but we do not know the total size of the enemy. Sir, this is not good for us, the deputy beside him said worriedly. It's indeed not good. The captain nodded solemnly. But we can only do our best to intercept them. The World Tree had split up too many troops, and it would not use all the routes as a medium for diviners. Therefore, even the Destiny's Child channel could not monitor all the routes of this exploration army. The three universal civilizations could only send troops to patrol everywhere, sifting through various areas like a sieve, intercepting the fish that escaped the net. This method was like finding a needle in a haystack. To a large extent, they could only rely on luck, and it would also cause their troops to be scattered. However, the defense circle had not been built yet, so they could only use a stupid method to catch the World Tree's attack. No matter how troublesome it was, they could not let the World Tree Exploration Army directly attack. The Outer Realm Defense Circle was a huge project. The principle was to use the flickering world as the center and build a virtual sphere. Then, it would continuously expand and spread until it covered the current location. Then, the three universal civilizations would cut a spherical arc in the direction of the World Tree's advance. According to the situation, they would enlarge or shrink it to form a three-dimensional boundary. This would determine the basic range of the defense circle. Then, they would build a large number of wormholes to quickly support the base stations to make up for the problem of the battle line being too long. Due to the large area of the arc, this seemed to be an impossible project, but it was actually just a limitation in terms of manpower and resources. With the efficiency of the three universal civilizations, the scale of their military strength, and their resource reserves, it was enough to bear such a project. Since they did not want to be driven straight in by the World Tree, there were not many tricks to be used to build a defense line. Just as the captain was about to speak, the anti-stealth radar suddenly issued a warning. It pointed diagonally ahead, showing a group of unknown targets that were moving. "We've encountered them. Let's go." The captain's eyes narrowed, and he immediately gave the order. The fleet immediately changed direction and headed toward the target. The target locked onto by the radar did not turn around and headed straight for them. Not long after, this Arcane Church fleet met with the troops personally led by Orwell and appeared within sight of each other. "Fire!" The captain did not say anything else. With a ferocious expression, he let out a Li Yunlong roar. The Arcane Church fleet immediately opened fire and fired a round of shot. The cannons on the ship lit up with a dark red light, followed by a dazzling beam of light that tore through the starry sky. At the same time, Orwell's personal troops also counterattacked. Two waves of light intersected and shot into each other's formation, causing sparks to fly on the shield. Neither side had any intention of communicating. The moment they met, it was a fierce battle. They exchanged blows and shot at each other happily. Just as the two sides were fighting intensely, a mental wave suddenly erupted from Orwell's flagship and swept across the Arcane Church fleet in the blink of an eye. Many Arcane Church battleships seemed to have been triggered. They suddenly shot out complicated magic circuits made of energy to block the mental wave head-on. Magic sparks flew everywhere from the explosion, and they immediately became much dimmer. They flickered non-stop and were heavily injured. Beyond grade A psychic. Request backup. The captain's expression changed, and he immediately asked for help in the command channel. As there were too many search teams, the limited number of beyond grade as was naturally not enough to be assigned to the various teams, so they were all on standby in the main base. Only when the search team encountered a World Tree expert would they be able to request for beyond grade A support. In order to prevent the memories of the ordinary crew members from being stolen by mental magic, psychic, and other means, the search spaceships had been specially treated. They had been equipped with mental barrier strengthening devices and engraved with special industrial enchantments to resist mental invasion. The number of times depended on the strength of the other party, so that the crew members would not be killed instantly. Not long after he said that, a phantom suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Then, it suddenly solidified, and Kasuyi descended through the multidimensional sky opening transportation device. "This is the individual strength of the World Tree?" Kasuyi narrowed his eyes, and a look of interest flashed across his eyes. The next moment, boundless psychic energy surged out like a flood and slammed toward Orwell's troop. The psychic energy released by this Holy Tree emissary suddenly rolled back and turned into a shield to protect the fleet. However, it only lasted for a few seconds before it was crushed into dust by Kasuyi's ocean-like psychic energy. The exploration spaceships were crushed into scrap metal one after another and exploded into fireworks. Seeing this, the Holy Tree emissary hurriedly rushed out of the main ship and attacked Kasuyi. The psychic wave turned into a needle and shot toward Kasuyi's brain. There was a ding sound, but it could not pierce through Kasuyi's thick mental barrier at all. Without another word, Kasuyi released an even more condensed psychic energy and immediately bound this Holy Tree emissary. The huge difference in energy level made his opponent almost unable to move. "Let me see your memories." Kasuyi's eyes flashed, and his psychic energy entered the brain of the Holy Tree emissary. This was the first time he had come into contact with a World Tree powerhouse. Before this, he had only heard about it from Han Xiao and had not experienced it personally. At this moment, he could not help but want to pry into the other party's memories. However, the moment the psychic tentacles entered the Holy Tree emissary's mind, a majestic pressure suddenly came through the mental connection. Boom! An indescribable fear crashed into Kasuyi's heart, and he instantly felt a bone-deep palpitation and fear. It was as if he was being looked at by an endless giant beast. An extremely strong sense of vigilance suddenly rose in his mind, as if something extremely terrifying would happen if he did not cut off the mental connection. This was because the World Tree's mental network connected all individuals. Once one tried to use mental methods to peek into the memories of an individual, it was equivalent to connecting to the world tree. Outsiders would immediately feel the immense pressure of the mental network, as well as the strong pressure. It would also be sensed by the world tree. If one continued to maintain the mental connection, it would give the world tree a chance to devour one's soul in reverse. At the very least, the world tree would go crazy. This is the world tree? Kasuyi hurriedly retracted his psychic energy, his eyes filled with surprise. He finally understood why Han Shao was so afraid when he mentioned the world tree. Although it was only a glimpse, he almost collapsed at this moment. The pressure of facing a high-level existence was deeply engraved in his heart. After dismissing the thought of peeking into the memories, Kasuyi increased his strength, and his psychic energy bombarded the Holy Tree emissary. Not long after, the consciousness of the Holy Tree emissary was crushed, and his body exploded into pieces. In the only remaining exploration flagship, Orwell lit a cigarette and took a puff. He looked at the artillery fire outside the window and shook his head helplessly. TSK, I didn't succeed. I hope I'll be lucky next time. The next second, the artillery fire drowned the spaceship, and it exploded. All the crew members, including Orwell, turned into seeds and returned to the embrace of the World Tree. At the same time, in the Tree King Palace of the World Tree Civilization. What a powerful psychic! He killed Manny so easily. The faces of Tidrian and the other executives tensed up. They had been watching the entire process of Orwell and the sacrificed Holy Tree emissary through the mental network. Did you see how this psychic arrived? It's similar to the teleportation method used by the outsider last time. The Heart Tree King said calmly, "There's a 70% chance that this unknown civilization is the hometown of that outsider. This is good news." The Subduing Tree King nodded. The outsider last time had already made them feel pressured. If they encountered a new enemy at this juncture, they would also doubt if they could fight on two fronts and eat two prey at the same time. But now that they had more or less confirmed that the two were the same enemy, it was a relief. If that was the case, the exploration team had found the enemy's lair when they had no clue. It was simply an auspicious sign that fate was on their side. This psychic standard should not be as good as that outsider's, but he's still powerful enough. Ordinary Holy Tree emissaries are far from his match. It can be seen that this is indeed a civilization with very developed individual strength, Tidrian pondered. The Heart Tree King nodded and slowly said, "The other party's strategy is very clear. They plan to build an interception circle here. It's obvious that it hasn't been built yet, so we can destroy it. Next time, choose a set of coordinates to teleport at the back and let the troops build a temporary base there as a guide. When the time comes, gather the troops and launch a general attack." "We don't need to gather intelligence before launching a general attack like before?" The Subduing Tree King turned around. "Of course, we have to gather intelligence, but focusing on this is too conservative and inflexible. It's best to adjust the plan according to the situation. Gathering intelligence is one thing, but it's also important to take the opportunity to disrupt the enemy's deployment. The two don't conflict. If we let the enemy build an interception circle comfortably, we'll have to spend more than 10 times the cost to break through. We might as well make a move now and destroy the enemy's plan." The Heart Tree King narrowed his eyes. The World Tree Civilization's style was more pragmatic. He did not have the habit of waiting for others to transform before making a move. Chapter 1352. In the command room of the main base of the intercepting battle zone, reports of successful interceptions were continuously sent back. Simon and the others were surrounding the real-time star map to control the entire situation, while the Beyond Grade as were on standby. The 10 multidimensional sky-opening transportation devices outside the window were in a preheated state, ready to be activated at any time. This time, a light flashed in the corner of the room, and Kasuyi, who had changed into the king's suit, teleported back to the room. Wrapped in Han Zhao's mechanical force, he immediately attracted the attention of the others. "You're back? How do you feel?" Han Zhao raised his brows and took back the king's suit on Kasuyi. Because the multi-dimensional sky-opening transportation device was only responsible for one-way teleportation, the intercepting troops naturally did not bring another set of teleportation devices. Therefore, Han Zhao borrowed the king mechanical suit and asked the other beyond grade as to bring one set when they were out. After they were done, he would use mechanical force to pull it back, increasing the efficiency. The beyond grade as of the World Tree are quite strong. Kasuyi nodded solemnly. However, he was trampled to death by you. I feel like you're praising yourself in disguise. Sun Hunter was suspicious. Ahem, I'm evaluating him based on the standards of ordinary beyond grade as. Don't include peak beyond grade as. The other party's psychic power is relatively strong. That light green energy seems to have greatly increased his psychic power. He can probably fight one. 6 Cisco on our side, Kasuyi pondered. Not bad. The dynasty has Kohler, and you have Cisco. This kind of cushion, basic combat strength unit is still more convenient for us to compare strength, Lotus Swordsman said calmly. Fortunately, neither of them were here, so no one jumped out to refute. Everyone nodded. What you're talking about is the combat strength increase brought about by the connection of the World Tree. Basically, every beyond grade A of the World Tree civilization enjoys this bonus. It's equivalent to everyone having a Wonder Grade Universal Treasure, Han Zhao replied. So, the average combat strength of the other parties beyond grade as is higher than ours? Manason's Lord's Avatar asked. You can say that. Han Zhao spread his hands. However, in terms of high-end combat strength, they should be about the same. The 5 Tree Kings and the 10-leaf executive officers under them are on their own. The 13 ancestral spirits and the high-level Holy Tree emissaries are extraordinary, and there are also the high-level military generals in charge of foreign wars all year round. We can still fight. It sounds like he's not to be trifled with. Secret Master shook his head. Kasuyi frowned and said, Speaking of which, I just tried to pry into the other party's memories, but I felt a powerful pressure. If I didn't withdraw my psychic power in time, I'm afraid I would have been seriously injured. Is that the power of the World Tree? That's right, that's the World Tree. Don't use your mental strength to probe the memories of any member of the World Tree. They are all connected together and are protected by the World Tree. Furthermore, their thoughts are monitored. Once there is a deviation, it will be corrected to prevent spying, possession, and other mental methods, Han Zhao explained. They're just like slaves who can never rebel against their masters. Kasuyi sighed and then asked curiously, Then how did you get the information from them? Do you even need to ask? I'm stronger than you guys. Han Zhao was very honest. Everyone was speechless. Even though it's the truth, why do we want to hit you so badly? Everyone ignored Han Zhao and asked Kasuyi all sorts of questions. Although everyone present had read the information about the hundreds of World Tree experts that Han Zhao had collected previously, they were still very curious about Kasuyi's experience. Han Zhao did not mind and shook his head. He stood up and walked to Simon and the other's side. As he listened to the orders of the upper echelons and staff officers, he looked at the changes in the real-time star map. There were densely packed light spots on the star map. Each of them represented an intercepting force, and they were changing dynamically. There were crosses in some places, which represented the locations where they had successfully intercepted the enemy. There was a circle of light around the crosses, as well as lines that extended out, representing the possible routes of the other World Tree exploration teams. The interception situation is not bad now. It's all thanks to your intelligence, Simon said when he saw Han Zhao walking over. We're just helping each other. Han Zhao did not mind. Simon nodded and sighed. However, the intercepting circle is still too passive. We can only try our best to prevent the World Tree Exploration Team from entering our territory. However, if we defend for a long time, we will definitely lose. As long as the enemy goes around far enough, there will be fish that escape the net sooner or later. We can only think of a way to delay this moment. There's nothing we can do about that. After all, our opponent is the World Tree. Han Xiao shrugged. That's right. This civilization is practically born for war. If it were any other opponent, we wouldn't have to defend our home like we are now. What a troublesome enemy. Simon was helpless. The three universal civilizations were also overlord civilizations. If the enemy was not a war machine like the World Tree, with their current intelligence advantage, they might have already thought of a way to take the initiative to attack. However, no tactic could be applied to all situations. Taking the initiative to attack depended on who the opponent was. If they ignored the opponent's actual situation and used the tactics in the tactical manual, they would most likely suffer heavy losses. After all, they were not like the World Tree who could fight with their resources without any heartache. With the Karma Republic as an example, the World Tree's strongest point was not its fiery invasion but its constant encroachment. Furthermore, Han Zhao's intelligence had already shown that the main body was the foundation of the World Tree. If this was a real-time strategy game, then the World Tree territory would at most be a sub-base. The main base would still be in the fog of war, and the three universal civilizations would have exposed the location of their main base and be attacked. It was naturally not worth it to exchange bases with a sub-base. Furthermore, the other party's explosive speed was even faster. After sorting out his emotions, Simon took out his pocket watch and said, "The interception circle is still in the construction stage, and we lack manpower the most. How long will it take for the Beyond Grade A fleet of your association to arrive?" "Soon, they're gathering at the teleportation point," Han Xiao replied. The current flickering world was quickly turning into a war zone, and unrelated people were leaving at high speed. The Radiant Federation did not hesitate to take out a large number of multidimensional sky-opening transportation devices and set up a gathering point in the Dawn Star Cluster to teleport the follow-up troops over. The fleets of the Black Star Corps and other Beyond Grade A organizations were rushing there. Simon nodded and said, "As soon as possible. The more manpower we have, the sooner the interception circle can be completed. The longer we keep the World Tree out of our territory, the better." The Galactic Era emphasized efficiency. Advanced mobility reduced the time taken to travel, and many things could be encountered every day. However, on a higher scale, many things needed a long time to evolve. In the next few days, the three universal civilizations' interception forces played hide-and-seek with the World Tree's 274th Exploration Team. The exploration teams were wiped out one after another, but due to the detour, the battle line became longer and longer. At the same time, batch after batch of reinforcements from the Beyond Grade A organizations also arrived at the interception zone and quickly entered the construction of the interception circle. Wormhole after wormhole support base stations were quickly built and connected to each other like a large net, forming layers of barriers. The area was rapidly expanding every day, spreading further and further. The interception zone was already the front line. More Beyond Grade as had finished their matters and arrived one after another. The number of people quickly approached 100. On this day, on the observation deck of the main base, Han Xiao stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the bright galaxy. He seemed to be thinking about life, but he was actually scrolling through the forums to check the reactions of the players who had arrived at the front line. Just as he was focused on reading the post, footsteps suddenly sounded behind him. Han Xiao turned off the interface and looked back. It was Hela and Aurora. "You guys are here too?" Han Xiao glanced at the two of them. "We just arrived." Hela's expression was calm. "I know that with your personality, You definitely won't miss such a battle. Han Xiao shook his head. He did not force the two sisters to participate, nor did he force them to stay behind. After all, the two of them were already beyond grade as, so he had to respect their wishes. If they came voluntarily, he would not stop them. Furthermore, the two sisters were indeed outstanding combatants. Since we have to fight the enemy together, we naturally can't stay out of it. With my current strength, I don't have the habit of accepting protection with a clear conscience, Hela said slowly. Han Xiao glanced at Aurora. What about you? Since my sister is here, I'll definitely follow. Otherwise, what if she gets killed? Plus, my ability should be of great use. Aurora smiled. Here, she might be safer than me. Hela snorted. This was also one of the reasons why she did not stop Aurora from following. With you here, the safety of the other beyond grade as will be guaranteed. Han Xiao nodded at Aurora. Don't misunderstand. We have other plans. This is a good place to strengthen the underworld. Hela waved her hands. It is indeed a good opportunity. Han Xiao nodded in agreement. With the underworld here, even if the warriors below the beyond grade A level died, they would have a chance to be reborn. The meat grinder of war had always been a treasure land for collecting souls. As long as the underworld could store them, there would be no problem. However, the World Tree warriors were bound by the connection, and their souls would not drop even if they died. It was unlikely that they would be able to capture them, and the underworld would most likely only be able to retrieve the dead soldiers of the three universal civilizations. Furthermore, Han Xiao did not dare let the two sisters take the risk to capture the members of the World Tree. If the connection between the World Tree and the underworld was not broken because of this, the coordinates of the underworld in the secondary dimensions would be exposed. It would not be good if the World Tree followed the clues and attacked the underworld. However, this did not affect the strategic importance of the underworld. In Han Zhao's eyes, the underworld had the ability to change the overall situation. Its effect was not inferior to the Sanctum Revival, and it even surpassed it in some aspects. Unfortunately, Aurora's accumulation was still too little. If she was allowed to grow for another few decades, the power of the underworld could reach a new height. Han Xiao turned back to look out of the window and said with a deep voice, I have a feeling that the World Tree will not sit still and watch us deploy the defense line. I'm afraid they will organize a large-scale attack very soon, and a tough battle might break out soon. It will also be the first large-scale battle between the three universal civilizations and the World Tree. Is this your intuition? Hela raised her brows. No, it's just a prediction based on the World Tree's style. Han Xiao stroked his chin, sighed and said, Don't worry. No matter what, you have to protect yourselves. I might not be able to take care of the intensity of a universal war. I'll take care of myself, Hela replied calmly. In the territory of the World Tree civilization, an endless fleet was spread out in the universe. In the distance, streams of light kept shooting over, turning into new troops that merged into the group, causing the scale to continuously expand. Many executive officers nodded silently when they saw this. After Heart Tree King decided to launch a strong attack, they immediately mobilized the various armies and gathered here to wait for orders. Due to the superior characteristics of the mental network, the efficiency of the World Tree civilization's gathering of troops was extremely shocking. Very soon, a large expeditionary army with 8 billion battleships was formed, ready to attack at any time. Your Excellency Tree King, when will the attack begin? An executive officer turned to look at the two Tree Kings. The subduing Tree King did not say anything and turned to look at Heart Tree King. The scale isn't enough. Gather more people, Heart Tree King said slowly. Your standard is. Tidrian probed. This is the first battle. Treat this attack as a greeting. The size of the fleet should be at least 50 billion. Otherwise, we won't be able to take it out. If they can't even block this little attack, then we can use bolder tactics in the future. Heart Tree King's tone was so calm that it was as if he had only thrown out a small chip on the gambling table. However, he paused for a moment before continuing. By the way, we have to consider the possibility of that outsider participating in the battle. That person is not easy to deal with. Chapter 1353. The interception work was still in full swing. Because the opponent only brought one Holy Tree emissary, the other intercepting troops did not encounter any individual strength. Only Kasuyi was dispatched once. The other beyond grade, as did not have the chance to make a move and were on standby at the main base of the interception zone. In the cubicle of the command room, nearly 100 beyond grade as were gathered together, doing their own things. Some were supervising the situation, some were resting with their eyes closed, some were handling matters, some were chatting casually, and some were even playing cards on such a serious occasion. It was simply unreasonable. Speaking of which, it's been a while since our two groups sat down and chatted together. Kant looked at the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations who were sitting upright and said with a sigh. When the three universal civilizations targeted the association, Han Shao did not allow the direct beyond grade as to participate in the regular meeting. After the lockdown was lifted, due to various matters, they had not restored the normal treatment of the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations in the association. Therefore, when they were on standby at the main base, it was a situation where the association members and the direct beyond grade as sat together and chatted. Now that we're all facing a common enemy, let's not talk about the past for the time being. We're just doing it for our own masters. Olu sighed and glanced at Han Shao, who was in a daze, browsing the forums, with a complicated expression. Don't confuse us with you. You have masters, but we don't. It's all for ourselves. Sun Hunter curled his lips. Olu was silent for a few seconds before changing the topic. I see that not all the members of your association are here. Why aren't the others here? They're still considering. Kasuyi shook his head. You guys are participating in the battle, and they're just watching from the back? You guys can accept this? Olu raised his brows. That's why you guys should kneel down and be grateful to us. Damn it, just thinking about it makes me feel so great, Sun Hunter cursed. Kasuyi explained helplessly, someone has to set an example. If not for Black Star taking the lead, we might not have come. At this moment Claude, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and slowly said, Then, do you guys have the resolve to die in battle? Hearing this, everyone paused and turned to look. Claude was expressionless and calm. We, the direct descendants, have entered the battle with the determination to sacrifice our lives. Aren't you selfish people afraid of losing your lives? Even if there's a sanctum revival, I'm sure none of you are willing to spend a chance to revive and hand over the initiative of life to others. You're right. Of course no one is willing to sacrifice themselves if they can live. However, we need to personally experience the strength of the enemy in order to know what's going on. So, don't expect us to fight to the death for you. We're just fulfilling our end of the deal. We've already done our best to help you. Secret Master responded indifferently. At that moment, Ola looked at Han Shao, who wasn't participating in the conversation, and said loudly, Black Star, if we die, you will help us revive, right? Hearing this, Han Shao turned around and glanced at him, giving him a concise reply. He wasn't familiar with Ulu before, but after interacting with him for a few days, he found him to be as easy to deal with as the others said. Yes. Then I'm relieved. If I can leave my body behind when I die in battle, please make a specimen out of the spacetime amber and let me bring it away after I revive, lest others covet my handsomeness and steal my body home. Ola made a joke, but no one laughed. Do you think you're very humorous? Sun Hunter rolled his eyes. Han Shao couldn't be bothered with the people chatting. He looked away and continued to browse the forums. Currently, more than 90% of the players in the universe had come to the front lines. Most of them were rubbing their hands, looking forward to the war starting soon. Such large-scale war operations had always been a good opportunity for the players to gain experience. Most of the army players participating in the operation could gain experience more efficiently, which was beneficial for Han Xiao to accumulate experience. However, the players had not reached the level limit of the version, so the best use of experience was to level up on their own. Only after reaching the level limit would they have a lot of excess experience to do other things. This meant that when most of the players reached the maximum level, his efficiency of harvesting experience would increase by a lot. Now was not the fastest time to harvest experience. It's a pity that the role of the players can't reach the level of my previous life. Han Xiaoxin was speechless. The World Tree War was originally a late version, but due to the butterfly effect, it had been brought forward to version 5.0. In his previous life, it was only a mid-version. The players had lost a few versions of accumulation, and the level limit was reduced by dozens of levels. Naturally, their role on the battlefield was not as good as in his previous life. In his previous life, the players had a very high strategic value. The Immortal Death Squad formed by high-level supers had made a lot of contributions in many local battlefields. Now that this force was gone, it would definitely affect all aspects. Fortunately, the fate of Hela and her sister had been rewritten by him. The underworld should be able to fill this gap. Beep beep beep, just as he was thinking, his communicator suddenly rang. It was a message from Oathkeeper. Han Xiao took it out and took a look. His expression changed slightly, and he said with a deep voice, "The World Tree is recruiting an army. It's estimated to be tens of billions. It's preparing to launch a strong attack." Hearing this, the chatter in the room disappeared. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look over. Their expressions were solemn, surprised, and fearful. Han Xiao immediately walked out of the cubicle and shared the information with Simon and the others. The other Beyond Grade as also stood up and followed behind Han Xiao. Simon and the other commanders had been supervising the entire situation outside the cubicle. When they heard the information Han Xiao shared, their expressions changed. They hurriedly opened the long-distance communication and reported the situation to the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations. The figures of the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations appeared on the long-distance communication screen. The 3 of them listened to the report with solemn expressions and nodded solemnly. "Is the World Tree Civilization preparing to attack? Got it. We will send the order for the various armies to gather at the front lines and prepare for a tough battle." As he spoke, Marbruce exhaled, and his tone carried a hint of relief. "Black Star, your news this time is still very timely. You've bought us a lot of time." The World Tree Civilization was still in the recruitment phase, and before they could gather their fleet, they were detected by Destiny's Child and sent to Han Xiao. This was a huge advantage. The other party would not attack so quickly, so they had plenty of time to prepare. If they knew the other party's next move in advance, the 3 universal civilizations would be able to react in advance. Black Star's intelligence channel had made contributions more than once, but every time, the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations would feel that he had helped them in their hour of need. It's not easy to deal with a fleet of tens of billions. Although I provided the advantage of intelligence, you guys are the main force. Han Xiao nodded. The World Tree Civilization had sent out tens of billions of battleships, which was indeed not a small force. However, in the scale of a universal war, this was not considered a general attack. The scale of tens of billions of battleships was not at the level where they were invincible. The mobilization ability of internal and external battles could not be compared. When there were no external enemies, the 3 universal civilizations would control their military strength to an appropriate standard and would not expand their army on a large scale to avoid excessive military expenditure. They would mainly store strategic resources. Once they fully entered the state of war industry, they would quickly turn into a militaristic mode. All the military factories under them would be filled with soldiers day and night, and their military strength would increase every day. The scale of the World Tree's attack was not enough for the three universal civilizations to immediately give up on intercepting them. Unless they could not stop them at all, it was not the time to use the strategic rear to exchange for time. This time, a staff officer stroked his chin and said, "Since the other party is still in the process of recruiting troops, should we try to take the initiative to attack and harass them?" Hearing this, everyone turned to look at him before retracting their gazes. Simon glanced at him, shook his head, and said, "The World Tree's information form warning network covers the entire territory. If we encounter it, we'll be exposed. What can we harass? Furthermore, any army can travel quickly through the territory, almost teleporting. Their mobility is far from what we can compare to. It's a natural ambush circle. Once we're exposed, we'll be surrounded by countless fleet. No matter how many of us go, we'll be eaten." Another commander pulled the topic back on track and said with a deep voice, "The Wormhole Rapid Support Base Station has already covered the current intercepting circle. No matter which intercepting area the World Tree hits, we can start a positional battle and stop the other party from breaking through." The intercepting circle was divided into many levels, and there were strategic areas of different distances between the different levels. The Rapid Support Base Station was a connecting channel, ensuring that the troops in the various areas would look after each other. Both the observation layer and the garrison layer had completed the relevant configuration. No matter where they encountered a strong enemy, they could quickly send in their main forces. As for whether the World Tree's assault troops would hit the intercepting circle, it was not a big problem. Although the intercepting circle was still under construction, it did not need to be fully formed to be effective. In essence, it was very similar to a race. It just needed to expand faster than the enemy. At the same time, the intercepting troops were also constantly setting up space anchoring orbits to clear the coordinates of the exploration teams, causing the opponent's starting point to move back as much as possible. As a result, they could only continue to travel normally and remain in the intercepting circle. It seems like the World Tree doesn't plan to just give us an appetizer. It's going to give us a main course. This is the first time I've experienced a universal war of this scale. Olu's eyes flickered. At this moment, Secret Master pinched his fingers and did a divination. He then said expressionlessly, "My death omen is flashing." With that, his hand gesture changed and magic waves spread out. Everyone sensed something and looked over curiously. "What did you do just now?" "I transferred the bad luck," Secret Master said calmly. "Who did you transfer it to?" "Him." Secret Master pointed at Han Xiao. Han Xiao looked at the luck reduction status on the interface, and his face was full of question marks. "Do we have a grudge?" "No." "Then why did you transfer the bad luck to me? Anyway, you're not afraid. There's no room for your luck to decrease." The corners of Han Xiao's mouth twitched. "Do you think I'm a trash can? If not for the fact that there are external enemies, I would have immediately let you know why your chrysanthemum is yellow." Chapter 1354. In the territory of the World Tree Civilization, where the expedition army was gathered. Densely packed wormholes were maintained in the starry sky, and World Tree routes extended out from them. An endless fleet shuttled through, constantly expanding the size of the expedition army. There were all kinds of battleships. Nearby, there was a floating watchtower made of light green root. The Subduing Tree King and the Heart Tree King stood there and scanned the expeditionary army's lineup. The Heart Tree King said calmly, "The high-level combatants this time include 3-leaf to 9-leaf executive officers, 7 high-level Holy Tree emissaries, the 13 ancestral spirits ranked 2nd to 6th, the 4 army commanders, and other experts. There are a total of 107 people. This scale is enough to test the opponent's strength and see how developed their individual strength is. Not bad. The subduing tree king nodded. More than 100 world tree experts participated in the expedition. This wave of lone troops had a low survival rate, but when the heart tree king sent out these members, he was already prepared to sacrifice all of them. Sacrificing did not mean that it would be for nothing. Using high-level combatants to kill was their usual tactic when facing strong enemies. The enemy's high-level combatants would be gone if they died, and their high-level combatants would return to their seed form after dying. They would wait in their main body for a certain period of time before they could wake up again. This was undoubtedly a good deal for the World Tree. They could use a war of attrition to slowly disintegrate the enemy's strength, causing the strength of both sides to decrease. The World Tree had used this method to defeat one enemy after another, and it had never failed. No one had cracked it, so there was naturally no reason not to use it now. The Heart Tree King turned to look at the Subduing Tree King and said, "They lack a leader. You'll go with them this time." "I have to go too?" 3-leaf Lin, 4-leaf Anrian, and a few army commanders are enough to lead the troop. There's no need for me to take the risk. The Subduing Tree King frowned. He was not too willing to participate in this exchanging expedition. The experience of returning to his seed form was not comfortable, and a Tree King needed more time to recover than the others. The Heart Tree King shook his head. "The other party's information collection has not been invaded by us. It is very difficult for the Mother Tree's authority to penetrate the area covered by their information collection. It requires the connection level of the Tree King to allow the Mother Tree's projection to descend, so you have to go." "Okay." The Subduing Tree King nodded and did not ask why it was not the other Tree Kings. Among the 5 great Tree Kings, only he had no other ability other than fighting. From a pragmatic point of view, sacrificing him was the most cost-effective. He was already used to being the vanguard. We might encounter that outsider this time. You'd better receive a baptism before setting off. Otherwise you might not be his match, Heart Tree King instructed. "Then I'll go and prepare." As soon as he finished speaking, the Subduing Tree King disappeared. After receiving the information that the World Tree was preparing to attack, the 3 universal civilizations quickly reacted. The highest-level military orders were passed down level by level like electric signals shuttling through a neural network, controlling the limbs of the giant that was the universal civilization. The various armies rushed to the front lines as though they were clenching their fists to gather their strength. Every few minutes to a few hours, a batch of fleets would arrive at the interception zone. Other than transferring their direct troops, the 3 universal civilizations also recruited the troops of other advanced civilizations, mobilizing the entire explored universe. As a result, the number of troops in the interception zone increased rapidly, increasing by 1 billion every day. Staying near the teleportation point, Han Shao had seen almost all the main battleships of the various civilizations over the past few days. The 3 universal civilizations' main battleships of all levels, which were rarely seen, were all here. The top main battleships that represented the strongest units were as eye-catching as cranes in a flock of chickens. At the same time, the 3 universal civilizations' transport troops kept sending over all kinds of universal treasures. The equipment used for individual strength was temporarily lent to the many beyond grade as, and even the association members could distribute it according to their needs. The other strategic universal treasures were given to the different fleet. On the lookout tower of the temporary base, many beyond grade as stood in front of the observation window, looking at the scene outside. The surroundings had already become a sea of battleships, almost covering the starry sky. As far as their eyes could see, it was as though there were only countless battleships with a metallic luster. If one looked very far away, this scene was like the scales on a giant beast that were gradually opening and closing. What a huge army! This is the first time I've seen such a scene. Many people exclaimed softly. Usually, the three universal civilizations would not mobilize so many troops, and the internal strife would not be so intense. Only the Exploration-era war could be compared to this. This was the first time a considerable number of people had experienced a universal war. Seeing this scene, they had a new understanding of the mobilization ability of the three universal civilizations. Although they did not know what the World Tree Army was like, just looking at the army of the three universal civilizations, many people's morale was boosted. There's not much we can do in a war of this intensity. Our mission is to strangle the high-level combatants of the other side, Kasuyi said with a deep voice. The high-level combatants are easy to deal with. The enemy has a lot of high-level combatants, so we won't have it easy. With their style, they should be thinking of ways to trade with us, a Beyond Grade A said worriedly. As long as you don't leave my healing range, I should be able to guarantee your safety. Hearing this, Aurora interrupted with a gentle tone. We'll rely on you this time. Thankfully you're here. Sorry to trouble you. Many people hurriedly responded politely, their friendliness close to the max. Through the mechanism of the World Tree, it was not difficult to guess that the other party was good at trading tactics. Everyone present knew very well that in such an intense war, the healer was the only thigh that could increase their survival rate. Many people gathered around Aurora like stars surrounding the moon, as if they were a support group. Hela, on the other hand, looked on coldly from the side. The contrast was stark. Manison did not care about the noisy crowd. He went to Han Zhao's side and slowly said, Black Star, you seem a little nervous. Are you worried that your indestructible body won't be able to withstand such an intense battle? Han Zhao turned around and sized him up. He then poked Manison's Lord's avatar's chest and said with annoyance, If you dare, come in your true body. If you have the ability, come here with your original body. Let me see if you're nervous. What a joke. I'm not an anomaly among mechanics like you. I've never done anything that puts me in danger. Manison snorted. Come on, just say it if you're afraid. You still have the face to appear in front of me with your small body. Han Zhao expressed his disdain. Manison laughed disdainfully. He paused for a moment before suddenly retracting his smile. You should know who the strongest person on the World Tree's side is, right? The strongest should be the leader of the 5 Great Tree Kings, the Ancestral Tree King. Then can you deal with him? Manison was curious. This person is unfathomable. I'm not confident either. Han Zhao shook his head. Among the 5 Great Tree Kings, the Subduing Tree King, who was a pugilist, was at the bottom, and the Ancestral Tree King was the strongest. Even in the intense battle in his previous life, the Ancestral Tree King was an elusive existence. The number of times he attacked could be counted on one hand, as if he was outside of the war. However, the Ancestral Tree King's battle record was very impressive. Those who died in his hands were all peak beyond grade as, and none of them were weak. It was as if ordinary opponents were not worth his time. At the same time, the Ancestral Tree King was the person with the deepest connection to the World Tree. In a sense, he was the only master of the World Tree. Han Zhao was not sure if he could defeat the other party. Even you don't have confidence, Manison pondered. Just as Han Zhao was about to say something, his communicator vibrated. The room immediately fell silent, and everyone's gazes gathered on Han Zhao. They all realized something, and their expressions turned solemn. Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and took out his communicator to take a look. He paused and took a deep breath. They're here. Chapter 1355. 10 minutes later, in the command room, Simon and the other supreme commanders, as well as the commanders of the various armies, gathered to analyze the enemy's situation. Many beyond grade as listened from the side, and only Han Zhao participated in the discussion. The enemy's location has been exposed. They have built a temporary base in this area far away and sent out many scouts to advance. They have increased the teleportation coordinates. They can choose to teleport and shorten the distance. I estimate that when they encounter the intercepting troops, the main force will jump over. The tactical star map was displayed on the virtual screen with many coordinates marked. Simon would zoom in and out of the map from time to match his explanation, and everyone listened attentively. The main force of the World Tree civilization had already gathered in their own territory, but they did not move out immediately. Instead, they sent out scouts to build a temporary stronghold and get closer to the intercepting circle to obtain closer coordinates as jump points, shortening the distance of normal navigation. This was because once the main force arrived at the war zone, they would not be able to hide and could only travel normally. There was a high chance that they would encounter the over-the-horizon firepower of the three universal civilizations along the way. If the teleportation point was too far away from the intercepting circle, the losses would increase. Therefore, they had to shorten the distance as much as possible. Although the World Tree civilization was not afraid of battle losses, they did not want to bathe in artillery fire. Han Shao had obtained this information from Destiny's Child and shared it with the three universal civilizations. Thus, this battle meeting was held. The enemy's mobilization ability is astonishing. They came very quickly and did not give us much time to gather. Although we have more troops, our advantage is not great. This battle will not be easy to fight, another Supreme Commander said. Currently, our greatest advantage is the home field advantage and depth. We have already set up many traps, ambush areas, and over-the-horizon strike zones in advance. If the enemy's main force is delayed for more than 7 days from the jump point to the intercepting circle, we estimate that we can reduce the enemy fleet by 2 to 7 billion. However, the prerequisite is that the information we stole is accurate enough. The enemy's battleship technology is not different from ours, so they won't take out any black technology, the upper echelon officer in charge of coordinating the construction of the defense line said. As they spoke, everyone turned to look at Han Shao. Most of the information about the World Tree was provided by Han Shao. Currently, they could only rely on Han Shao in terms of intelligence. His contribution was countless times more than all of them. There's no problem with the information. Han Shao nodded. Although the World Tree civilization was strong and had a bunch of black technologies, their battleship technology did not have much of an advantage. The technology content of their main battleship model was about the same as the three universal civilizations, and there was no generation difference in their performance. This had been shown when they participated in the war in Han Zhao's previous life, so the three universal civilizations did not collapse and withstood the pressure. Simon clapped his hands. The situation is clear now. Next, I will assign you your tasks. He quickly assigned the missions according to the plan, and soon, it was the turn of the many beyond grade as. Looking at everyone, Simon said in a deep voice, "You don't need to participate in the early stages of the firepower coverage and harassment battle. All of you will remain on standby at the base and wait for the battle. Also, mechanics, don't just sit around. Provide technical support at the virtual network level." All right. Everyone nodded in agreement. In a universe-level battle with tens of billions of battleships, their numbers were like a drop in the bucket to the enemy's fleet. Fighting against an entire fleet as individuals was far more risky than beneficial, so this mission did not require the participation of high-level combatants. The battle meeting was short and concise, and the results were out very quickly. Not long after, the official army announcement was sent out, and the war machine was quickly activated. The commanders followed the orders, and the fleets sailed out of the port one after another, turning into streams of light and disappearing into the universe. The players who were on standby in the various fleets received a few main storyline war missions that they had been longing for, and the forums were once again filled with discussions. Han Shao had also triggered these missions. After browsing through them carefully, he realized that the situation was roughly the same as the main storyline missions of the World Tree War in his previous life. They were all about killing the enemy for contribution points and contribution points for rewards, but there was a slight difference in the description of the mission. In his previous life, most of the words used were resist and block, but now the description of the mission was more positive, and the relevant missions were adjusted according to the butterfly effect. For example, this intercepting battle that did not exist in his previous life had formed a branch mission. If he could complete the strategic goal of stopping the enemy, not only would he obtain high rewards, but it would also have a positive impact on the overall battle situation. This was also a characteristic of the World Tree main storyline. Every local battle would form a branch mission, and the results of the battle would dynamically affect the overall strategy. In his previous life, the players had decent combat strength in the later versions, and sometimes they could influence some local battles. However, in a battle of this scale, the outcome was not up to them. They could only try their best to open up a breakthrough and create opportunities for the main force. This was also the role that the players often played in battles in his previous life. The rewards of this kind of main storyline mission were mainly EXP. To Han Xiao, it was a drop in the bucket, but to the players, it was extremely rich. If they could obtain the victory reward of the intercepting battle branch mission, their EXP per capita would increase by a large amount. As a terminal for harvesting EXP, the players were like a reservoir to Han Xiao. The players did missions and worked to create wealth, EXP, and then a portion of the wealth flowed to him through consumption and other means, helping him develop. Without leaks shining brightly, how could he maintain the super combat strength increase over the years? Therefore, this kind of large-scale collective mission had always been Han Xiao's favorite. Be it for strategic considerations or the goal of harvesting EXP, he wanted to do his best to win this battle and speed up the accumulation of EXP. As Han Xiao and the other Beyond Grade as did not participate in the harassment battle at the front line, they only watched the frontline battle reports in the base every day and monitored the overall situation. The three universal civilizations first eliminated and intercepted the scout. Not long after, the World Tree finally chose the nearest jump point, and the expeditionary army officially arrived, heading toward the intercepting circle. The large army was attacked by over-the-horizon firepower along the way, and they passed through many trap areas, resulting in some losses. However, even though they were frequently harassed by the three universal civilizations, the distance between the large army and the intercepting circle was still shrinking every day, getting closer and closer. The situation developed step by step, and the World Tree Expeditionary Army finally came into contact with the intercepting circle. The armies of the three universal civilizations were on alert, and the large armies of the two sides finally broke out in a direct confrontation. Many Beyond Grade as were summoned. The light of the multidimensional sky opening transportation device filled their vision. The next moment, Han Xiao and the other Beyond Grade as were teleported to the main command ship at the back of the battlefield. "You're finally here." Simon nodded to the crowd in greeting. "How's the situation now?" Han Xiao asked as he turned to look out the window like everyone else. What entered his eyes was a magnificent battlefield that stretched as far as the eye could see. Hundreds of billions of battleships were engaged in a chaotic battle on both sides, and their formations were intertwined. It was as if endless battleships were weaving an impenetrable net of light. In such a large-scale battle, it was extremely difficult to coordinate. The basic command was based on the various formations, and they were divided into different battle zones. The special technologies and universal treasures of both sides took turns to be used, and all kinds of strange phenomena occurred in different areas. More than 100,000 battleships exploded into fireworks every second. Naturally, the two sides would not set up a formation and attack again. The war had started the moment the harassment troops fired the first shot. The World Tree Expeditionary Army fought with the three universal civilizations all the way from the jump point to the intercepting circle, not stopping for a moment. Now, it was only from a harassment battle to a direct battle. There was no chance for them to stop temporarily and give the other party a chance to adjust. Seeing this scene of a universe-level battle, many beyond grade as were shocked and gasped. The temperature in the room dropped by a few degrees. Looking at such an intense battle, many beyond grade as could not help but feel a headache. They felt that they did not know where to start. In such an intense fleet battle, a beyond grade A individual was just a drop in the ocean, and their lives were in danger at any time. Only on the battlefield of two universe-level overlords could one deeply understand that most of the internal conflicts in the past were small skirmishes. This was the highest level of war. Ignoring everyone's thoughts, Simon replied with a deep voice, "We're still evenly matched at the moment. The direction of the situation is still unknown. The other party's high-level combatants have yet to make a move." Han Xiao retracted his gaze and said, "Are the World Tree experts still watching? We don't have to participate in the main battlefield, right?" "No need. Other than the mechanics providing virtual technology support, the mission of the rest of you is to deal with the high-level combatants of the World Tree. Don't worry about anything else for now." Simon shook his head. Individual strength was rarely in charge of frontal combat in large-scale battles. Most of them used a series of tactics such as charging, attacking, guarding the main ship, and so on. The commander basically would not let the high-level combatants take the risk to waste their energy on the main battlefield. After all, the energy and stamina of a normal beyond grade A were limited. Only mechanics who grasped virtual technology could play a huge tactical role in a large-scale galactic battlefield. They could continuously invade the enemy's network and seize control of the battleship. Their role was far greater than that of the other four supers. All right. Han Xiao had no objections. In such a battlefield, they only needed to take care of their own responsibilities. Controlling the overall situation was the responsibility of the commander, not the job of beyond grade as like them. At this moment, the real-time battlefield star map changed. More than 100 high-energy sources suddenly appeared in one of the battle zones. The three universal civilizations' fleets in that area instantly suffered large-scale casualties, and many war main ships exploded. The situation quickly became one-sided. The World Tree sent out high-level combatants? Simon's eyes narrowed, and he turned around to look at the surveillance footage. He saw World Tree experts of different appearances charging forward, and all kinds of abilities took away the three universal civilizations' fleets one after another, opening up the situation in this battle zone. Han Xiao identified the enemies and locked his gaze on the subduing Tree King. He narrowed his eyes and was a little surprised. He had thought that the Tree King would not participate in such a battle, but he did not expect the subduing Tree King to come. However, considering that the other party was a pugilist who specialized in charging and breaking through the enemy lines, it seemed reasonable for him to be a suicide squad. After all, this was the only specialization a pugilist had. At this moment, Simon retracted his gaze, scanned everyone, and nodded. "Everyone, I'll leave it to you." As soon as he said that, the direct beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations did not hesitate and headed toward the cabin door. The expressions of the other beyond grade as froze, but they did not say anything. They shook their heads and followed. Since they had chosen to come here, even if the battlefield was dangerous, they could not escape. Very soon, the beyond grade as left the spaceship one after another and flew at high speed on the battlefield. They moved along their formation and quickly arrived at the battle zone. Even though they were still far away, the auras of the two individuals resonated with each other and locked onto each other as they approached each other. Han Zhao's gaze locked onto the subduing Tree King from afar, and the subduing Tree King also sensed it. He stared at Han Shao, and his pugilist flames continued to rise. "Leave that Tree King to me. You guys deal with the rest," Han Shao said in the channel. "Understood." The association members responded one after another, and the direct beyond grade as distanced themselves a little, using their actions to express the same attitude. The Arcane Church did not let Wurnos participate in the battle. Black Star was currently the strongest combatant of the three Universal Civilizations army, and he was facing the strongest enemy. The others naturally had no objections. As Han Shao charged forward, he activated all kinds of skills. His gaze never left the subduing Tree King. Their gazes seemed to be emitting sparks from afar. "I can't touch you in your territory. This time, I have teammates too. What I didn't finish last time can be settled now." A cold glint flashed across Han Zhao's eyes. Mechanical force was flung out, and the mechanical soldiers in his body were released. They followed behind him, and transformed along the way, sticking to his body. The precise mechanical armor quickly covered his face that was filled with killing intent. In the endless sea of fleets, two groups of people dragged their dazzling tails and rapidly approached each other. Then, two streams of light suddenly collided, and a chaotic battle broke out. Chapter 1356. Bang! Colorful lights spread out in all directions with the point of collision as the center. The scene was like a supernova explosion. The energy tsunami created by the combined power of more than 200 beyond grade as swallowed a large number of fleets all at once. The sudden burst of high-energy reaction alarmed countless battleship radars on this battlefield, instantly becoming the most eye-catching area in the entire war zone. Beams of light from the surface of the mechanical deity bombarded an emerald-green meteor one after another, but they were unable to penetrate the defense of this layer of protective flames. All of them exploded into light fragments on the shield. The subduing Tree King, who was wrapped in green flames, circulated his energy and raised his hand to punch out. His fist, which was flickering with a dazzling light, hit the blade of the celestial punishment edge heavily. A violent shockwave immediately exploded at the point of contact, producing a loud buzzing sound that echoed in the depths of the soul of a living being. "Outsider, it's really you." The subduing Tree King raised his hand to block the celestial punishment edge and released a cold mental wave. Han Shao could not be bothered to guess what the other party was thinking. Mechanical force surged all over his body, and he activated the Geta Hadakan. The celestial punishment edge maintained its momentum, and psionic energy gushed out along the blade. The powerful dark blue shockwave sent the subduing Tree King flying. However, the next moment, the subduing Tree King stopped in his tracks, turned around, and charged forward again, continuing to face the mechanical deity's attack head-on. His fists and legs brought about swift shadows, and an emerald-green shockwave gushed out endlessly. It condensed to the point that it was almost materialized, and it was like a spear of light stabbing into the psionic shield of the mechanical deity. With the support of the World Tree, the subduing Tree King's protective flames were like indestructible Vajra. Countless electric arcs and energy sparks continuously exploded in the head-on collision. The blade of the celestial punishment edge swept up a wave of dark blue psionic energy, and each slash was faster than the last. In the blink of an eye, it collided with the subduing Tree King more than 1,000 times. The two of them kept merging at high speed, and the stacking of various force fields caused the surrounding space to slightly bend and dislocate. If not for the fact that it's not suitable to use the chat tactic, I would have given you a few sentences. Han Shao pursed his lips and suppressed the urge to send a message and shout the name of the move. While fighting, he was also keeping his eyes and ears open, observing the situation. In this kind of battlefield, there was no such thing as a tacit understanding of not fighting against high-level combatants. The countless warships in the surroundings did not stop their attack. Large numbers of troops poured into this war zone, forming a crisscrossing formation. However, the fleets on both sides wanted to kill the high-level combatants of the enemy while protecting their own experts. Thus, they formed a stalemate, indirectly giving the beyond grade as of both sides room to maneuver. It was also because of this that the many mechanics, including Han Xiao, did not summon too many mechanical troops. Otherwise, if the target was too big, they would have to endure the concentrated fire of the surrounding fleets, which would cause a lot of extra losses. It was not worth it to use good steel on the blade. Swoosh! Just as he was analyzing the situation, the subduing Tree King's body suddenly shone brightly, and he used his pugilist technique. His charging speed suddenly increased, and he headed straight for the mechanical deity's torso. It was as if his entire body had suddenly become indestructible, and he actually smashed through the psionic shield. The green meteor struck the mechanical deity's abdomen armor, creating a huge crater and large crack. Then, the subduing Tree King's head suddenly spun in the middle of the crater, as if it was going to turn into a drill to drill through the mechanical deity. Obviously, his head was not made of ordinary metal. However, at this moment, large amounts of black nanoparticles suddenly seeped out from the crater in the mechanical deity's abdomen armor. They quickly condensed and transformed into countless mechanical tentacles that lashed out at the subduing Tree King. The bearings carried out mechanical transmission, and when the force reached the end, the tentacles suddenly tightened. They turned from whips into spears, and a neat round of stabs pierced into the subduing Tree King's protective aura, pushing him out. Then, Han Xiao turned the hilt of his blade and slapped the other party like he was swatting a fly. The subduing Tree King was sent flying, knocking over 3 to 4 beyond grade, as who were fighting along the way. "You still want to enter my body? Dream on." Han Xiao patted the abdomen of the mechanical deity, and the crater quickly recovered. Pugilists basically killed the main body or the Lord's avatar when dealing with mechanic. This was the most efficient operation. The subduing Tree King wanted to enter the body of the mechanical deity and attack his main body. Although he had caused a ruckus in the World Tree territory the last time and lasted for about 10 minutes under the siege of more than 100 beyond grade it was still not enough for the World Tree experts to completely accept his tankiness. They would still try to attack his main body. After all, the 3 universal civilizations had accepted the title of the indestructible body because they had witnessed Han Zhao's achievements over the years. However, this information was not circulated in the World Tree. Han Xiao had only displayed his tankiness once in the other party's territory before retreating with heavy injuries. Therefore, most of the World Tree experts still did not know much about Han Xiao and would not easily give up on attacking his main body. The combat strength of a Tree King is indeed extraordinary. I won't be able to take him down in a short time, Han Xiaoxin thought. The last time they fought, he did not experience the full strength of the subduing Tree King. Now that he looked at it, the other party was indeed not simple. Before Carrot was fully formed, the subduing Tree King was undoubtedly above all the pugilists he had encountered so far. Beast Ancestor, Garutan, and Star Crusher Sierran were all little brothers in front of him. If they fought, they would probably not survive a day in the subduing Tree King's hands. However, even if the subduing Tree King was a ferocious man, his strength was still above his head. At the same time, the subduing Tree King perfectly met the criteria of being a peak beyond grade A elder of the World Tree faction. On the interface, the 4 talents of the World Tree Nemesis, the civilization leader, assassin, elderly killer, and fearless heart, lit up at the same time. Fight steadily and defeat him. Han Zhao's eyes flickered. He had the advantage in terms of combat strength and class, but the subduing Tree King was not to be trifled with. He could still exchange a few blows with him, so he would not be able to take him down in a short time. The two of them fought fiercely, and light waves shot out in all directions. The other beyond grade were also in a chaotic battle. The energy released by so many beyond grade as kept pushing the others away, causing their battlefields to gradually move away from each other. Although most of them did not have the intention to fight one-on-one, both sides wanted to defeat each other one by one. However, they could support each other, so they naturally formed small groups to fight fiercely. Bang! Mechanic Emperor's trident stabbed forward and was blocked by a broad-faced greatsword. The psionic energy wrapped in mechanical force collided with each other and exploded into a spherical light blue energy ball. The two mechanical deities were evenly matched, like two blurry afterimages colliding constantly. Shockwaves frequently burst out. One of them was silver, and the other was golden red with green energy wrapped around its body. The color scheme was extremely bullish *T. What a sharp guy! Manison pushed his opponent away with his trident and narrowed his eyes. He had already learned from Black Star that the individual strength of the World Tree was very developed, but only after fighting did he personally experience how powerful the other party was. Although he was no longer at his peak after suffering a series of blows from Black Star, he was still firmly in the first tier. Ordinary peak beyond grade as were still no match for him. However, this enemy was now fighting back and forth with him, even making him feel quite a bit of pressure. Even though Manison felt that his strength was slightly stronger than the other party, it was not enough to create an overwhelming advantage. Furthermore, this person was not in the information provided by Han Shao about the hundreds of World Tree experts. He was a strong enemy with an unknown background. Just as Manison was thinking, the other party suddenly sent out a mental wave in his heart. "You're very powerful. What's your name?" Hearing this, Manison was unmoved and did not reply. Although he did not receive an answer, the other party did not stop and continued to send out mental messages. "It doesn't matter if you don't say it. I've got my eyes on you. You have the qualifications to be my spoils of war, World Tree Trilemma Executive Officer Lin Karen. Remember this name. Your life is destined to be mine." "You talk too much." Manison was unperturbed. Such flirtatious words had no effect on him. After being influenced by Black Star, he was no longer afraid of chatting. However, he remembered the other party's name. According to Black Star, the 10 executive officers were all at the top of the World Tree. The higher they were ranked, the more powerful they were. Trilemma was in the first tier of the World Tree experts, and she would definitely have a place in the top 15. "Looks like a big fish," Manison's eyes flashed, and he silently increased his strength. His attacks became more and more ruthless, and his killing intent overflowed. In a certain part of the battlefield, two torrents of energy, one black and one white, collided with each other, causing endless light to splash like water. Dark Emperor Claudi controlled the surging dark energy and was fighting with a slender World Tree member. The other party was also an Esper. He controlled a dazzling white energy that was like flowing platinum. Its texture was as elegant as a veil, like a rolling fog, but its power was extremely corrosive. "What Esper ability is this? It's on par with mine." Claudi frowned slightly. The strength of an Esper depended partly on their grade and partly on the effect of their Esper ability. If their grade was the same, then the higher the Esper ability, the more stable the advantage. For example, God's energy control was one of the most powerful Esper abilities. If they grew to the same level, Claudi basically had no chance of winning. Claudi's dark energy control was already a super high-risk Esper ability, but the other party's Esper ability was also not simple. Although the other party did not hit his body, he realized that his cells had become weak, and his energy consumption was much higher than usual. It was as if the other party had used energy as a medium to launch some kind of attack on him. At this moment, this person suddenly sent out a mental message. "Your ability is not bad. Mother Tree will definitely be very happy if I give you to her. The World Tree also likes to collect Esper abilities. Claudia thought about it and tried to ask for more information. However, the other party did not say anything and did not respond. Claudia thought that the other party did not want to answer, so he gave up on the idea of asking and continued to fight silently. However, after fighting for a while, the other party suddenly spoke again. "I'm the World Tree's 4-leaf executive officer, Anrian Zero." Claudia was stunned for a moment. He thought that the other party was going to say something, so he immediately perked up and waited. However, after the other party said this, he did not continue for a long time and fell silent again. Claudia frowned, feeling confused. What's the meaning of this sudden self-introduction and not saying anything else? What's the meaning of this brainless introduction? After a while, Anrian spoke again. "When you enter the embrace of the World Tree, we can become colleagues." After saying this, he fell silent again. It was as if he was talking to himself and did not expect the other party to answer. Claudia's eyelids twitched. It's confirmed. He's a weirdo who does whatever he wants. On the other side, Hela, who was wearing the crimson snake mechanical suit, was dealing with the siege of 4 people. Scarlet death energy spewed out like a flood, and the battle was extremely intense. Compared to the other battlefields, there was a clear difference on Hela's side. When she was surrounded, there were no other beyond grade as coming to support her. It was as if everyone was letting her face the siege of multiple enemies alone. Bang! A pugilist World Tree expert passed through the sea of death energy and caught Hela to beat her up. In the end, just as she was about to break free, he kicked her in the abdomen and sent her flying. While Hela was flying, another World Tree expert blocked her way. A series of spells poured out and bombarded Hela's back, sending her in another direction and causing secondary damage. Hela tried her best to stabilize her body. Suddenly, she used Death Stealth and instantly flashed to another location, obtaining a short breather. Her entire body was covered in blood, and she looked like a ferocious ghost. She was heavily injured and weak. Kasuyi, who was the closest, glanced over and quickly retracted his gaze. He had no intention of coming over to support her, and even led his opponent further and further away. Seeing this, one of the Holy Tree emissaries said playfully, "You're almost dead. Your companions are still ignoring you. No one came to help you. I didn't expect you to still have the mood to fight among yourselves in the face of our invasion. Interesting." Hela wiped the blood off her face as if she did not feel any pain. Her expression was still indifferent. "No one came to help me. That's because I don't need help." As soon as she said that, a golden light suddenly burst out from her body, and all her injuries disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hela straightened her back, and the chaotic energy fluctuations returned to their peak. Refined death energy flowed out continuously, and her expression became stern. "It doesn't hurt at all. With this level of skill, you're still 1,000 years too early to kill me." Chapter 1357. Swoosh. Kasuyi seemed to have turned into a phantom as he instantly dodged the magic energy beam from his opponent. He was not worried about the battle situation on Hela's side at all. Hela had not reached the peak of the Beyond Grade A realm, but in the eyes of many Beyond Grade As, including Kasuyi, she was one of the most difficult Beyond Grade As to deal with. Not only could she reduce one's lifespan, but she also had a nanny that was bound to her. She was like an unkillable cockroach. Even if others were strong, no one was willing to provoke Hela. Kasuyi focused his attention on his opponent again, and his eyes narrowed slightly. The invisible psychic energy was like thousands of needles, giving his opponent a high-level mind blast. However, it seemed to have hit a solid wall, and most of the power was deflected by his opponent's mind defense spell, turning into chaotic mental disturbances that spread out in all directions, immediately triggering the mental defense barriers of a large number of battleships. The first to bear the brunt of the shockwave was shattered by the shockwave. The other party was not to be outdone. With a surge of energy, A magic array appeared and gathered into a spherical shell. All kinds of exclusive spells poured out, dazzling and colorful. The dense spell tide chased after Kasuyi and bombarded him. The style of fighting leaned toward the style of a magic cannon with covering firepower. What a smooth connection of magic! There are no flaws. All the cells in Kasuyi's body became active. His eyes emitted a strong light as he observed his opponent while fighting. Although he was not a mage super, he was still an expert in the field. With one look, he could tell that the other party had a lot of combat experience and was an extremely powerful mage. The combination of spells was smooth, and the biggest impression he gave him was that the other party had both offense and defense, and it was a perfect combination. Furthermore, the connection of the world tree had an extremely high enhancement to mental strength. If it was not for the suppression of strength, a psychic would actually be at a disadvantage against a world tree expert. This was especially obvious in a battle of the same level. Kasuyi discovered that the other party's mental barrier was extremely thick, and every mental attack was difficult to break through. It was as though it was indestructible. This guy seems to be a high-level ancestral spirit. Kasuyi adjusted his vision and saw the mark on the other party's forehead. Black Star had once explained the composition of the world tree experts to help them distinguish them. The ancestral spirits had a special mark on their appearance, which was that they were easy to recognize. At this moment, he was fighting a member of the world tree's 13 ancestral spirits. He was ranked second and his strength was quite high in the world tree. He was not much weaker than the third and fourth executive officers. While Kasuyi was observing, the second ancestral soul suddenly spoke. "I recognize you. You're the one who killed Manny." "Manny?" Hearing this unfamiliar name, Kasuyi's eyes flashed, and he immediately realized that it was the holy tree emissary he had killed some time ago. The second ancestor soul said indifferently, "I like strong enemies. You are a good opponent. I hope you can make me happy." Kasuyi raised his eyebrows. "We were fighting to the death, so why are we suddenly chatting?" He glanced at the temporary team chat channel of the Beyond Grade and realized that most of them were being talked to by the World Tree experts. It seemed like the other party had done it on purpose. After thinking about it, Kasuyi understood. The mentality of the World Tree experts is different from ours. They know that they won't really die in battle, so they are fearless and relaxed. On the other hand, we are tense as if we are facing a great enemy. Therefore, they took the initiative to speak. It should be a psychological battle to affect our mentality. On the other hand, perhaps they are trying to deepen the information entanglement and gather information. Why not? It's better not to answer. Kasuyi's mind raced, and he gave up on replying. After leaving a "don't answer" message in the chat channel, he focused on dealing with the second ancestral spirit. Psychic power and magic danced in the sky, dazzling one's eyes. An astral spiritual dragon soared in the battlefield. Its dragon eyes were like blazing golden flames, and its gigantic maned ship-like body was extremely eye-catching. Every time it flapped its dragon wings, countless draconic spells would be cast, setting off magic waves. Layers of defensive arrays covered its body, making it look extraordinarily valiant. It was Dragon King Milizaus. At this moment, an army commander was fighting with him. A gray meteor that was rather small in comparison was flying around the old dragon, constantly attacking. He was wearing heavy armor all over his body, and all kinds of special firearms were constantly changing in his hands. He alone set off a rain of bullets. He was a rare cannon master. The World Tree Military Department was in charge of external battles. The meaning of an army commander was the chief combatant of the military. Only the top Beyond Grade as in the military could obtain such a title. Every army commander had their own prefix code name, which usually depended on the number of the army they were in. The army commander fighting the old dragon belonged to a World Tree army called Darklight, and his title was Army Commander Darklight. The two of them were evenly matched, but due to their eye-catching size, the old dragon became a target, and he attracted the firepower of most of the battleships around him. When the World Tree experts who were fighting with other beyond grade as passed by, they would even throw a few skills at the old dragon. Anyway, the target was so big and the hit rate was extremely high. It would be a waste not to fight. Because of this, Milizaus suffered too much additional damage, and the injuries on his body continued to accumulate. Large amounts of dragon scales were torn off, and his flesh and blood splattered in the sky. His situation was getting worse and worse. Everyone was showing off, and only the old dragon was getting beaten up. Bang! A beam of light shot out from the muzzle of Army Commander Darklight's cannon, piercing through the cracked defensive array and hitting the old dragon's back, shattering a large piece of scales and flesh, adding a new injury to him. "This is the first time I've seen a creature like you. I wonder what your flesh tastes like." Army leader Darklight continued to spout nonsense as he fired his cannon. Milizaus felt a sharp pain in his back. He swung his dragon head and opened his bloody mouth to let out an angry roar. The sound wave condensed from magic power vibrated out and hit Army Commander Darklight head-on, sending him flying. However, the old dragon did not take the opportunity to chase after him. Instead, he turned his dragon body vertically, and a large number of magic patterns suddenly lit up on his body. The next moment, he suddenly disappeared from the spot and flashed to a battlefield not far away. There was a chaotic battle between more than 10 people going on here. He stared at a heavily injured Holy Tree emissary who was about to retreat under the cover of his companions. Milizaus flashed behind the Holy Tree emissary, and before the other party could turn around and make a hasty defense, he opened his mouth and spat out a dragon breath that was like broken jade enhanced by dragon language magic. Golden flames surged out and instantly engulfed the target. In just an instant, the body of the Holy Tree emissary melted and quickly turned into a pile of ashes that fluttered in the air until it dissipated. Not long after the start of the battle, the first casualty was born. Die! After taking down the first blood, Milizaus immediately felt that he had vented his anger. He was in high spirits and fully displayed the nature of a human-headed dog. However, he was not happy for long before he was immediately beaten up. The surrounding World Tree experts did not say anything and turned around to focus fire on Milizaus, shattering large amounts of dragon scales and flesh. His vitality rapidly flowed out. At the same time, Army Commander Darklight rushed over and switched to a universal treasure-level firearm to fire from afar. Powerful beams of light bombarded the old dragon's body, exploding into fireworks and even shattering one of Milizaus' dragon eyes. Blood spurted out. The surrounding battleships also turned their cannons and focused their fire on Milizaus. He had taken down the first blood, but he was instantly targeted and fell into a dangerous situation. His injuries were very serious. Kill him! Army Commander Darklight saw an opportunity and was about to try and kill his opponent in one go. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. Swoosh! A dazzling platinum-colored light suddenly shot out from behind the 3 Universal Civilizations fleet, as if it had passed through the chaotic battlefield and accurately landed on Milizaus' body. A huge amount of life energy was injected into the old dragon's body, and his heavily injured body immediately began to recover. In just a few blinks of an eye, his originally heavily injured dragon body had recovered by more than half, and he became lively again. With a swing of his dragon tail, he naughtily smashed several World Tree battleships. This scene immediately attracted the gazes of many World Tree experts, and their expressions changed slightly. A recovery-type Esper ability? After fighting in the universe for many years, the World Tree experts were very knowledgeable. Recovery Esper abilities were not rare, but those who could reach the beyond grade A level were extremely rare. After all, recovery Esper abilities were functional Esper abilities and were not suitable for combat. Furthermore, most Esper abilities did not have high potential, and training and sublimation were extremely difficult. However, this time, not only did the enemy civilization have a recovery-type Esper, but the recovery effect was unbelievably strong. It could heal a peak beyond grade A life form in just 2 or 3 moves. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the strongest recovery-type Esper they had ever seen. I didn't expect this prey to have such a trump card. The expressions of many World Tree experts changed, and they immediately realized that something was wrong. If they did not get rid of this recovery-type Esper, the battle losses would be extremely large, and the results of this exchange would be greatly reduced. We have to kill him first. A portion of the World Tree experts quickly completed the communication in the mental network. They immediately abandoned their current opponents, gathered together, and charged toward the location of the life energy. Although it was behind the 3 universal civilizations' fleet, they had no choice but to face it head-on. This was actually similar to the player's tactics. After all, who would not cut the healer first in a team battle? However, at this moment, a few streams of light suddenly shot out from the fleet, fearlessly facing this group of attackers who had the advantage in numbers. The two sides suddenly collided. With a flash of light, an intense explosion spread out, and the momentum of this group of World Tree experts was immediately stopped. The group of World Tree experts looked up and saw 5 beyond grade as shining brightly in front of them, not giving in at all. There's actually a group of people hiding? Seeing this, many of the World Tree experts were surprised. They thought that the high-level combatants of their opponents had all entered the battlefield. These 5 people looked at the large number of World Tree experts. Not only were they not nervous, they were even eager to give it a try. They were the 5 Underworld Hero Spirit Kings. The other 3 Hero Spirit Kings, including Sorokin, did not appear. Aurora only sent out 5 people, and the leader was the Hero Spirit King, Regia, who was currently ranked 2nd in strength. I can finally move around. Regia stretched his shoulders, and without another word, he led the other 4 Hero Spirit Kings to charge forward, starting a new round of chaotic battle. Even though the other Beyond Grade as knew about the existence of the Sanctum Revival, they did not want to sacrifice themselves so easily. In comparison, the Underworld Hero Spirits were the ones who were truly fearless. On the other side, on the 3 Universal Civilizations command ship, Simon looked at the battle between Han Shao, Hela, and the Underworld Hero Spirits, then turned to glance at the calm Aurora. He could not help but shake his head and sigh from the bottom of his heart. The Blue Star people are all monsters. Clang! The mechanical deity and the subduing tree king clashed again, and an intense shockwave spread out. This outsider seems to be even more capable than the last time we met. The subduing tree king moved his aching fingers. Under his cold appearance, his heart was surging. Although the outcome of the battle could not be determined for the time being, after this battle, he felt pressure from Han Shao that he had not felt in a long time. He had only experienced this feeling of unparalleled strength from one person, and that person was the unfathomable ancestral tree king. He did not expect that the prey civilization he had chosen this time would have such a high-level combatant. He had encountered a tough opponent. Although he did not want to admit it, he had to face reality. He probably would not be able to take down this powerful outsider by himself. The subduing tree king quickly glanced at the battle. In the mental network, the voices of 6 to 7 of his companions had already gone silent, which meant that they had died in battle. With the help of that recovery-type Esper, the enemy did not lose a single member. If this continued, wouldn't they be wiped out without any injuries? How could this be? I can't wait any longer. The subduing tree king's eyes darkened. Seeing that the situation was not right, he immediately made a change. Swoosh! The subduing tree king suddenly retreated and covered his face with his hands. His mouth was wide open, as if he was letting out a painful roar. The next moment, his entire body emitted an extremely dazzling green light, as if he had released the energy of the World Tree in his body. Endless green light overflowed from his body. Then, with a bang, an unstoppable pressure erupted with him as the center, as if an even higher existence had descended. The green light spots quickly condensed and turned into translucent light green roots of the World Tree. At first, they were only like many small snakes floating beside the subduing Tree King. However, these roots grew rapidly and soon expanded, whipping and dancing crazily on the battlefield. The appearance of the subduing Tree King also changed. His entire state was different. His body had turned into a material similar to the roots of the World Tree, and the green power of the World Tree flowed in his translucent body. It was as if he had undergone a transformation. A powerful aura assaulted him like a suffocating gale. Just now, the subduing Tree King had mainly relied on his own combat strength to fight, but at this moment, he began to borrow the power of the World Tree. This was the ability of the World Tree that could only be activated by the Tree King level connection. It was also the reason why the Tree King was the Tree King. All of this happened in an instant. While the subduing Tree King was transforming, Han Shao did not stop his long-range attacks, but they were all blocked by the dancing roots of the World Tree. Oh? An ultimate move? Han Shao narrowed his eyes. He was not unfamiliar with this transformation. This was the unique authority of the Tree King. It allowed his body to become a branch of the World Tree, like a temporary base station. In his previous life, whenever the Tree King activated this form, it would be a sign of him going on a killing spree. The most terrifying thing was not the increase in strength from this transformation, but the fact that his body had turned into a branch of the World Tree, which could bring about a wide range of buffs, increasing the combat power of all the World Tree members on the battlefield. This was the war form of the Tree King. Chapter 1358. The moment the subduing Tree King released the power of the World Tree, all the members of the World Tree on the battlefield emitted a green light. With the buff of the halo, it was as if they had taken an aphrodisiac, and their overall combat strength suddenly increased by a large margin. The halo covered the entire army, and the situation on the battlefield immediately changed. All the members of the World Tree army were given a buff, and they immediately charged forward. Many of the three Universal Civilizations troops, who were still in a stalemate, were instantly heavily injured, and their losses soared. The Beyond Grade as were the first to feel the change. The increase in the overall strength of the World Tree experts immediately broke the stalemate. Many of the Beyond Grade as who were originally in a stalemate with their opponents had the initiative taken away, and they fell into a disadvantage in the blink of an eye. Many of them were in danger, and their lives were in danger. Golden rays of light shot out frequently, landing on the Beyond Grade as who were in danger one after another. At the critical moment, they provided a mouthful of good milk, allowing a large number of Beyond Grade as to catch their breath. However, the World Tree experts also reacted. They used various methods to try to disperse or isolate the life energy that shot over, preventing this recovery-type Esper from healing his companions. Only Hela had a soul connection with Aurora, so she could receive the dawn of life that Aurora instantly released. It was as if she was bound to an external source of milk. The other Beyond Grade as naturally did not have such treatment. Although the milk was sufficient, they had to receive it. Although Aurora's Esper ability was strange, she was only an ordinary Beyond Grade A at the moment. She could not ignore all kinds of obstructions, and this tested her ability as a healer. Not only did she have to pay attention to the life state of every Beyond Grade A, but she also had to think of a way to avoid all kinds of obstacles and successfully heal the target. Han Shao monitored the situation of the various regions through the quantum network. The changes in the battle were all visible. The situation was obviously not good. The halo of the entire army is still very powerful. Fortunately, it can't be stacked. Otherwise, the effect of the 5 Tree Kings transforming together would be insane. Han Xiaoxin's eyes locked onto the subduing Tree King. Only by killing the subduing Tree King could he remove the enemy's halo and turn the situation around. Otherwise, the overall losses on his side would increase exponentially. However, at this moment, the subduing Tree King, who had been strengthened by releasing the power of the World Tree, retreated instead of advancing. He retreated and dodged into the heavy protection of the World Tree fleet. At the same time, he retracted the eye-catching World Tree roots into his body and had no intention of charging forward to fight Han Xiao. Han Xiao's expression immediately changed, and his emotions surged. He had thought that the subduing Tree King would charge forward to continue the battle after transforming and try to defeat him. He did not expect the other party to avoid the battle after going all out. If you're not going to fight, you should have said so earlier. You're so aggressive that it makes my blood boil. This is bad. If I don't get rid of him quickly, it'll be troublesome. Han Xiao felt helpless. After transforming, the Tree King had an extremely high strategic value. He no longer put himself in danger and hid in the fleet, continuing to provide bonuses to the army. This was a calm approach, but such a situation rarely happened in his previous life. It was not easy for the Tree King to release the power of the World Tree, so his fighting spirit also soared. Usually, he would fight to his heart's content. If the other Tree Kings had chosen to avoid the battle rationally, he would have been able to accept it, but this time, it was the subduing Tree King. Oh my God, a pugilist is actually not stubborn. My youth is over. Countless World Tree battleships protected the Commander-in-Chief, the subduing Tree King. Facing the seemingly endless cannons, Han Xiao felt his scalp go numb. Although he was quite confident in his tankiness, charging alone in such a large-scale battlefield was a little too arrogant. Furthermore, the subduing Tree King was too strong. He would not be able to deal with the enemy in a short period of time. If he rushed in, he would only be bombarded for no reason. If you have the guts, don't ever come out. Seeing this, Han Xiao threw down the subduing Tree King and turned around to kill the other World Tree expert. If you don't stop me, I'll kill your teammates. Although the members of the World Tree had never cared about the deaths of their teammates, this attack was an exchange. The subduing Tree King would always care about these exchanges. Otherwise, the meaning of his transformation would be very limited. However, Han Zhao's attention did not completely shift away from the subduing Tree King. He was still watching the other party's movements to prevent the subduing Tree King from using the opportunity to adjust his tactic. The subduing Tree King did not stop him. From another perspective, it could be said that he had gotten rid of the entanglement and used his companions as bait to lure him away. He also used his superior combat strength to attack the other beyond grade as. It was also a type of exchange. Because this is a battle of exchange, he doesn't want to waste time on an expert like me. He turned around and killed the other high-level combatant. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Han Xiao secretly guessed the subduing Tree King's intentions. At the same time, the subduing Tree King watched as Han Xiao changed his target. His face was expressionless and his eyes flickered. After the previous exchange, he judged that even if he transformed, he might not be able to take down this outsider with shocking combat strength. Therefore, he suppressed the urge to attack and continued to focus on the strategic goal of the exchange. As the Tree King who had fought many civilizations, he would not easily get carried away. However, he could not stay here and not attack. Otherwise, if he watched the outsider kill his companions, it would be meaningless for him to try to strengthen the effect of the exchange. Since he could not stop the other party's strongest person, he could only make the same choice and change his target. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. The subduing Tree King turned around and looked in the direction of the recovery-type Esper. On a certain battlefield, an arcane church formation was broken through by the World Tree Commandos. The formation of the frigates was torn into pieces, and the glorious sun-grayed main ship in the middle was bitten by the World Tree assault ships. Charge cabins bit onto the main ship's hull one after another, drilling through the armor and sending in batches of World Tree super squads. They launched a boarding battle and tried to seize the main ship from the inside. At this moment, the interior of the main ship had turned into a chaotic battlefield. Bloody battles broke out in all the cabins and corridors. The guards on the ship kept resisting the World Tree supers, and from time to time, new charge cabins would smash open new gap. The attacks came wave after wave. Reinforcements! Reinforcements! A captain pulled out the saber that had stabbed into the enemy's body, and a large amount of blood splattered on the armor's face. He did not have the time to wipe it off and anxiously called for reinforcements in the channel. But in the next moment, a blurry shadow flashed past his eyes. Then, a huge force suddenly exploded on the side of his head. His head was grabbed by a big hand and slammed into the wall. His body twitched a few times and then stopped moving. The owner of the hand was a burly World Tree officer. A large group of team members were massacring the soldiers in the main ship and had already broken through this line of defense. "Head to the main control room," the officer shouted and was about to lead the team forward. However, at this moment, the ground beneath their feet suddenly shook, and the cabin wall not far away shattered, revealing half of the black charge cabin. The cabin door opened and a group of army players rushed out to support them. Without saying a word, they charged toward the World Tree team. Both sides did not say anything, and a fierce battle immediately broke out. After a fierce battle, this officer led his troops to wipe out this player team, but they also suffered quite a bit of losses due to the opponent's fearless and brutal fighting style. Do these people want to die? This officer frowned. He had seen people who were not afraid of death, but this group of people just now had practically used their own heads to exchange for their injuries. In his opinion, there was only one possibility, and that was that the enemy had a strong belief and did not hesitate to exchange their lives for injuries. However, as a member of the World Tree, he would not be frightened by this kind of fearless belief. No one was afraid of death. If you want to fight with your life, I will fight with my life. Who's afraid of who? There was no time to rest. This World Tree officer threw this matter to the back of his mind and was about to lead his troops forward. However, at this moment, dense footsteps sounded from the corridor ahead. Another batch of reinforcements had arrived. Their appearance and abilities were exactly the same as the team that had been wiped out earlier. This group of people. The World Tree officer was shocked. He had already killed this group of people just now, but they had appeared again? What was going on with these people? Could it be that even if they could not be killed, they could revive like them? Before he could think about it, a fierce battle broke out again. Due to the losses in the previous wave, the combat strength of this World Tree combat team had decreased, and they were annihilated by the same group of players. This officer was also beaten into pieces. Similar scenes played out in many battleships. In the command ship of the three universal civilizations, Aurora released several rays of light, but before they could hit her comrades who were in danger, they were scattered by a few high-level combatants of the World Tree. Aurora frowned and lowered her hand. I'm too far away from the battlefield. The opponent has plenty of time to react and can easily block my energy. This won't do. It's difficult for me to use my ability. I need to get closer and shorten the distance. After Aurora finished speaking, without waiting for Simon's reply, she left the cabin in a flash and stepped into space. She turned into a golden stream of light and left the rear formation, quickly approaching the battlefield where the Beyond Grades were. This scene immediately attracted the attention of many World Tree experts. A large number of high-level combatants immediately approached this recovery-type Esper, but they were stopped by their respective opponents. Not long after, Aurora stopped in the middle of the main fleet of the three universal civilizations. Although she had closed the distance, she did not step into the battlefield. She kept raising her hand to release the dawn of life, scattering radiance. If the distance of the previous dawn of life was 10, then it was at most 2 to 3 now. The hit rate was higher than before. Not only that, all the life forms within a certain range of her would receive an increase in recovery speed. This was the passive halo of Aurora's Esper ability after she entered the Beyond Grade A realm. The range increased with her grade. When she was in the command ship earlier, the range of the halo was not enough to cover this place. Now that she had arrived at this battlefield, her halo took effect, covering most of the Beyond Grade as who were fighting. It's very dangerous here. Don't come over. Hela saw Aurora immediately, and her expression changed. Aurora turned a deaf ear to him and panted lightly. Ever since she entered the Beyond Grade A realm, she had never experienced such an intense battle. More than 100 Beyond Grade as were treated by her, and the amount of life energy she consumed far exceeded the speed at which her life energy was replenished. Her face gradually turned pale, and she felt as if her body was being squeezed dry. At this moment, dozens of world tree roots suddenly attacked the main fleet from the side. Every root contained astonishing energy, and they quickly smashed a large number of battleships, tearing open a hole in the formation. The next moment, the subduing Tree King shot toward Aurora like a green beam of light. The power of the World Tree burned fiercely. He had been looking for an opportunity to kill this recovery-type Esper. The moment Aurora arrived at the front line, he saw the opportunity and used the cover of the fleet to sneak in. He approached the edge of the main fleet and launched a surprise attack, vowing to eliminate the biggest factor that affected the exchange strategy. The World Tree Roots seemed to have formed a giant war chariot as they charged forward, sweeping away the obstacles in their way. At the same time, they blocked the focused fire of the fleet for the subduing Tree King. With the protection of the World Tree's power, the subduing Tree King dug his way into the main battleship. Aurora seemed to have lost her head out of fear. She hurriedly retreated and condensed holy light to hit the subduing Tree King's body. However, it was as powerless as scratching an itch, unable to stop the subduing Tree King's momentum. In the blink of an eye, the subduing Tree King appeared in front of Aurora as if he had teleported. His arm carried a green light as he drew a semicircle and slashed toward Aurora's head, as if he wanted to smash her into meat paste from top to bottom. Aura that crossed two watersheds locked onto Aurora's body. Aurora seemed to be intimidated. She maintained a panicked expression and froze on the spot, unable to move. However, at this moment, a ferocious mental explosion suddenly erupted with Aurora as the center. It was extremely invasive and almost materialized. The subduing Tree King felt a pain in his brain, and his fist could not help but deviate. The crescent-shaped fist shot out like a blade of light and brushed past Aurora, shattering hundreds of battleships along the way. Sorokin's figure separated from Aurora's body and appeared behind her like a substitute. He pressed his forehead softly, and his mental energy surged out continuously. He activated all his abilities, and his aura surged. There's another protector? The subduing Tree King's expression did not change. Just as he was about to break free from Sorokin's mental energy and continue attacking Aurora, something unexpected happened. The panic on Aurora's face instantly disappeared, and she regained her composure as if she had expected this. The necklace she was wearing suddenly unfolded, and the mechanical structure instantly covered her entire body, turning into a set of mechanical armor that the subduing Tree King was familiar with. Swoosh! The next moment, with a flash of light, Aurora disappeared, leaving behind only Sorokin and a throne. At the same time, Han Zhao's figure appeared out of thin air and replaced her original position. Without waiting for the subduing Tree King to react, he raised his hand and used the 7 heavenly chains, hanging onto the subduing Tree King's body. "I knew you guys wouldn't give up, wet nurse." Han Zhao's strong arm grabbed the subduing Tree King's neck, and he felt a huge force hitting his chest. It was as if he was hugging a big fish, and the subduing Tree King was struggling in his arms. The subduing Tree King had been hiding in the fleet the entire time and did not have many opportunities to attack. He had specially asked Aurora to come out. Although it was a simple bait tactic, he believed that the World Tree experts would not sit still. After all, the battle strategy of the World Tree was different. Han Zhao thought from the other party's perspective, and felt that in the other party's eyes, only by cutting off the wet nurse could they successfully carry out the exchange tactic. For this, sacrificing some high-level combatants was worth it, and there was a certain chance of luring the subduing Tree King out again. Although the fishing hook was straight, it could not withstand the other party's willingness. It could be considered a simple and effective plan. The subduing Tree King was expressionless. He kept raising his elbow and attacking Han Zhao's abdomen like raindrop. Shockwaves exploded between the two of them. A portion of the World Tree roots blocked the focused fire of the surrounding fleets, and a portion of them landed heavily on the two of them, wanting to pull Han Zhao off the subduing Tree King. In terms of strength, the subduing Tree King was still stronger. Han Zhao could not lock down the other party, but just as the subduing Tree King was about to break free, mechanical structures quickly spread along the point of contact between Han Zhao and the subduing Tree King, turning into a set of king armor that wrapped around the subduing Tree King. "Eat my match made in heaven." Han Zhao's mechanical force flashed, and the two of them disappeared. Swoosh! The next moment, the two of them appeared in a strange, empty area behind the three universal civilizations formation. It was as if the fleet had deliberately left it there. The moment the two of them appeared, the prepared fleets activated the protective shield around them, quickly forming a spherical barrier that covered this area. Then, they immediately retreated. The subduing Tree King frowned and finally broke free from Han Zhao's embrace, sending Han Zhao flying with a kick. He turned around and scanned his surroundings, discovering that there were hundreds of strange-looking mechanical devices floating in this area. At the same time he was observing, hundreds of mechanical devices suddenly lit up, as if hundreds of wormhole channels had been opened. The interior of the channels was filled with a dazzling light, emitting a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation. Han Zhao stopped flying and narrowed his eyes. "A few hundred improved keys of destruction are enough for you and me." Before the war started, Han Zhao had specially instructed the three universal civilizations to set up this type of trap and place the throne in the trap. The three universal civilizations had set up many similar traps before the war and tried to form a combination skill with the mechanisms of different universal treasures. This trap was one of the examples, and it was also the plan that Han Zhao had suggested, using the teleportation of the King mechanical suit and the lethality of the Key of Destruction to form a killing zone. Advanced version. To the underworld. Buzz. The next moment, a blinding light gushed out from hundreds of tunnels, instantly filling this area and drowning the two of them. Chapter 1359. Ruthless. At this moment, the many beyond grade as who were fighting could not help but divert some of their attention to Han Zhao's situation. They also knew about the trap area formed by hundreds of keys of destruction. Looking at the expanding light, they could not help but sweat for Han Zhao. Black Star's method of mutual destruction was famous for being shameless, but the power of hundreds of keys of destruction was not something the Mech Legion could compare to. Furthermore, they were restricted to a small area, and their power was highly concentrated, making their explosive power even more terrifying. Not only was he ruthless to the enemy, but he was also ruthless to himself. Everyone felt that Black Star's methods were too crazy. Wasn't he afraid of blowing himself up? All sorts of thoughts flashed through everyone's minds, but before the power of the explosion reached its peak, large cracks suddenly appeared on the protective shield around this area. Bang! 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 Dozens of world tree roots appeared, crazily digesting the power of the explosion while slapping the shield from the inside. Then, a green meteor slammed into the cracks on the shield. Crack! The shield trembled, and a hole was blasted open. The charred subduing tree king rolled out. The next moment, Han Zhao's figure also flew out and chased after the subduing tree king. He tried to fight him, but he was sent flying by the world tree roots like a baseball. At the same time, because the protective shield was shattered by the subduing tree king, the power of the keys of destruction broke through the shield from the inside. The chain reaction energy cluster in the area lost control and expanded rapidly. Fortunately, the three universal civilizations' fleets had already left a large empty area around the trap to prevent such a situation. The nearest fleet had plenty of time to retreat, and at the same time, they kept firing long-range cannons at the subduing tree king. The subduing tree king did not care about anything else. He gathered the world tree roots and turned them into a protective stance. He then hurriedly fled into the distance, avoiding the expanding energy cluster behind him, afraid that he would be swallowed again. Han Zhao stopped and continued to chase after the subduing tree king. As the two of them moved away from the energy cluster, they continued to fight. Suddenly, a bright light flashed and the expanding energy cluster exploded. The shock wave spread out in all directions and hit the two of them in the back. The huge impact threw the two of them into the air at a much faster speed than normal. After rolling countless times, Han Zhao barely managed to stop himself. His entire body was in pain, and his body was covered in charred wounds. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. On the other hand, the subduing tree king, who had fallen not far away, was in a similar sorry state, as though he had lost a layer of skin. You sure run fast. Han Zhao's veins throbbed as he stretched his arms and legs. The scorch marks fell off one by one, and his injuries gradually healed. His plummeting HP slowly recovered. The subduing tree king was not a dead person who would foolishly stay in the trap and take damage. At the critical moment, he also unleashed his full strength and smashed the barrier to escape the explosion area. Han Zhao had originally stayed behind to stall the subduing tree king, but after the other party broke free from his successful sneak attack, he no longer gave him a chance. Han Zhao had used the king to teleport here, so he naturally removed his mechanical deity form. The descent of the mechanical deity was not instantaneous, and there was not enough time in a hurry. With just the attributes of his main body, he could not control a pugilist like the subduing tree king and was smashed to the side. The premise of the together to the underworld tactic was to control the enemy. How could the target obediently stay in the focus area? The subduing tree king ran fast, and with the protection of the world tree roots, he escaped before the key of destruction completely exploded. He did not take full damage, and even Han Zhao could only chase after him. However, the power of this wave was too terrifying. Even though the subduing tree king escaped in time, he was still severely injured. His body was covered in wounds, and the dozens of world tree roots suffered the most damage. They also withered, and the power of the world tree flowing within them was severely exhausted. Their color was dim, and they were weak as though they had withered. The subduing tree king lowered his head to look at his heavy injuries. He was completely emotionless, and his tone was calm. Not a bad attempt. I didn't expect you to be so bold. Looking up at Han Zhao's injuries, a look of regret flashed across the subduing tree king's eyes. I was too careless. If I had known that the other party would take such a risk, I wouldn't have escaped just now. I might as well have gone with the flow and dragged this outsider down with me to get rid of this dangerous opponent. The thoughts of the members of the World Tree were different from ordinary people. The subduing tree king did not rejoice that he had escaped death. Instead, he felt that it was a pity that he had missed an excellent opportunity to exchange. It's a pity that I didn't kill that recovery-type Esper. The subduing tree king shook his head. This outsider clearly had the advantage in strength, but he still took the risk. His intention was very clear. He knew that he would not be able to take him down in a short period of time, and was not willing to fight for too long. Thus, he tried to get rid of the halo that he brought with him as soon as possible to reduce the losses. The subduing tree king was well aware of this. However, even if he had to do it again, he would still attack that recovery-type Esper. The other party had taken the initiative to use his weakness to lure him, so it was worth a try. As long as he could make his opponent lose his healer forever, the deaths of all the high-level combatants, including him, would be worth it. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind, but the subduing tree king did not stop moving. He turned around and fled in another direction, not wanting to fight at all. He had been brought to the enemy's main force by his opponent and was heavily surrounded. How could he have a good time fighting here? The most important thing now was to prolong his survival time. Only by escaping back to his own fleet and receiving protection would he be able to escape danger and continue to provide the halo of the entire army. Running again. Seeing this, Han Shao gritted his teeth and immediately chased after him. Along the way, he quickly returned to his mechanical deity form. The two of them fought again, moving as they fought. Pugilists were not scary, but pugilists were not stubborn. As long as the subduing tree king was a little more reckless, he would not be so difficult to deal with. Boom, boom, boom. The surrounding 3 Universal Civilizations battleships were not idle either. They provided a huge amount of firepower support, and an endless stream of light cannons bombarded the dozens of world tree roots that the subduing tree king extended from all directions. Han Shao was not willing to fall into the enemy's main force alone, and the subduing tree king did not dare to either. An army of this scale was enough to pose a threat to the life of an individual. Not only did the focus fire cause the world tree root fragments to fly everywhere, but it also restrained the subduing tree king. Furthermore, the subduing tree king was heavily injured, and his condition was greatly reduced. Although his recovery ability was not bad, under the entanglement of Han Shao and countless fleets, the subduing tree king's injuries did not show any signs of improvement. He was in a vicious cycle. The other world tree experts and many fleets wanted to rush over to provide support, but they were all stopped by the 3 Universal Civilizations troops on the various battlefields. The two sides fought fiercely, and their eyes turned red. Swoosh! A blazing red light ray streaked across, cutting the 2 withered world tree roots in half. The subduing tree king, who was protected by the roots, could not dodge in time and had half of his foot cut off. The texture of the cut was like a broken piece of wood, slowly twisting and growing, as if it was about to grow a new foot. Looks like this is where I'll be buried. The subduing tree king observed the encirclement and frowned. He had tried to break out of the encirclement for a long time, but he was still trapped in the main forces of the 3 Universal Civilizations. He endured the fierce attacks, and more than half of the world tree roots he summoned after transforming were cut off. His body was gradually approaching the end of its flight, and he was no longer able to resist Han Zhao's attacks head-on. With the combat strength of the subduing tree king after releasing the power of the world tree, he could have lasted for a longer time. However, the tactic of going to the underworld together had worked, and he had secured victory. If not for the fact that he was heavily injured in this wave, the subduing tree king would not have been beaten to the point where he could not retaliate so quickly. At this moment, space buzzed and shook. The mechanical deity's palms spun, and all kinds of force fields enveloped the subduing tree king, trying to imprison him in midair. The subduing tree king's expression tensed up. He circulated his weakened pugilist flames and struggled to break free. "You want to capture me alive?" Hearing this, Han Shao did not reply and continued to increase the strength of the force field. Currently, the World Tree was already in front of his door, and the approximate coordinates had been exposed. He could use the spacetime amber to seal the World Tree powerhouse and see if he could suppress the revival ability of the World Tree. However, the only problem was that the World Tree powerhouse would not obediently accept the seal. Sensing Han Zhao's intentions, the subduing Tree King's expression was calm. He resisted the force field and slowly said, "Your resistance is futile. We will invade your civilization sooner or later. If we fail this time, there will be countless times. You can't stop the iron hooves of the World Tree forever. I'll wait to fight you next time." As soon as he said that, before Han Zhao could react, the subduing Tree King's body suddenly burst out with a strong light and self-destructed without hesitation. Bang! A violent shockwave swept out, causing a large amount of electric arcs on the shield of the mechanical deity. The remaining roots of the World Tree also collapsed, turning into light fragments and dissipating as if they had never existed. The World Tree had fought in the universe for many years, and it had encountered more than once civilizations that wanted to capture their high-level combatants alive. Their thoughts were basically the same. They believed that by capturing the World Tree powerhouses alive and not killing them, they would be able to stop the revival of the World Tree and reduce the other party's capital in a war of attrition. This situation was not new for the World Tree powerhouses at all. Although the subduing Tree King did not know what methods the enemy had to capture him alive this time, there was no need for him to take this risk. Seeing that the situation was not right and there was no way to escape, he directly self-destructed and did not give him a chance. In this regard, the members of the World Tree were too experienced. Unless the difference in strength was too great or they had no choice, the members of the World Tree would rarely let themselves enter a near-death state where they were at the mercy of others. When they were weak, they would consider self-destructing and return to the embrace of the Mother Tree. What a troublesome enemy! The Tree King is indeed not easy to deal with. Han Zhao's eyelids twitched, and he clicked his tongue. The formation of the spacetime amber required time, and the other party had brazenly self-destructed to prevent himself from being imprisoned. There was nothing he could do about this. Although he had the advantage against the subduing Tree King, who was about the same strength as him, he could not easily crush him. In the past, his opponents were normal people. They would either completely lose their combat strength and be unable to move, or they would rather be sealed than die in battle. No one would easily give up their life and self-destruct, so the spacetime amber had succeeded many times. However, the World Tree's thoughts were completely different. They liked the exchange tactic, exchanging lives for lives. Self-destruction was a common occurrence for them. "You want to control me? Then I'll die for you." This was very troublesome. In his previous life, although the spacetime amber was taken away by the World Tree powerhouses, the three universal civilizations did not give up on capturing the other party's high-level combatants alive. However, most of them ended in failure. The biggest obstacle was the World Tree powerhouses' decisiveness in self-destructing. No matter what, the Tree King has been revived for quite some time. At least the halo of the entire army has been removed. Han Zhao calmed himself down and turned to look at the battle. With the death of the subduing Tree King, the green light on all the World Tree members dimmed again, and they lost the buff from the halo. The pressure on the three universal civilizations' troops instantly decreased, and they finally returned to normal. "I can't do anything to the subduing Tree King, but the difference in strength between ordinary beyond grade as and me is too big. I might have a chance to seal a few." Han Zhao moved his gaze and looked at the other World Tree experts who were fighting. At the same time, in the World Tree territory, the Tree King Palace, the Heart Tree King slowly opened his eyes and looked at the few executive officers who did not participate in the expedition. The subduing Tree King has been sacrificed and turned into a seed. Hearing this, the faces of the executive officers present darkened. Although they had expected this outcome when they set off, they were still shocked when it really happened. After all, the Tree King represented their top combat strength, and the meaning of his death was not ordinary. At this moment, the Heart Tree King stood up from his throne, summoned a root, and stepped on it, preparing to teleport. "Aren't you going to continue watching the battle?" an executive officer asked. "The outcome of the battle has been decided. It seems like the attack this time has failed. The effect of the exchange is limited, but we've probed a lot of the enemy's trump cards and that crucial recovery type Esper. The harvest is enough." "Understood. Where are you going now?" Hearing this, the Heart Tree King glanced at them and shook his head with a smile. "I'm going to water the subduing Tree King so that he can grow up quickly." Chapter 1360. Well done. Bang. Seeing the subduing Tree King explode into fireworks, Simon suppressed the excitement in his heart and smashed the table. Black Star was still reliable. He had gotten rid of the enemy's key point and stabilized the situation. Having suddenly lost the halo of the entire army, the World Tree Troops' advancement during the enhancement period had instead caused a large number of fleets to fall into a bad situation. Simon saw the opportunity and quickly calculated for a few seconds before speaking in the command channel. "All units, pay attention. Press forward." When the three universal civilizations on the various battlefields received the news, they immediately took action and cooperated with each other, gradually suppressing the enemy fleet. On the other side, when the World Tree experts saw that the subduing Tree King had died in battle, there was a slight commotion. Due to the loss of the Halo enhancement, their combat strength increased, and the advantage they had previously obtained was quickly reversed by the Beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations. Without the restriction of the subduing Tree King, Han Shao returned to the battlefield where the Beyond grade as were and attacked the other World Tree experts. Like a tiger entering a pack of wolves, he quickly brought about an overwhelming victory. Han Zhao's goal was to use the spacetime amber to seal the World Tree experts, but it did not go that smoothly. Before the subduing Tree King self-destructed, he had used the mental network to inform all the high-level combatants of the World Tree present. When the World Tree experts felt that they could not hold on any longer, they self-destructed decisively. The World Tree knew that their opponent might be the hometown of an outsider, so they naturally would not make a low-level mistake. They did not send any foreign experts to participate in the battle and were still on guard against the virtual purification that they had yet to study. Even so, Han Shao had the advantage in terms of strength. After many attempts, he still successfully sealed a target. Before the other party self-destructed, he used thunderous methods to beat him to the brink of death and swallowed him into the amber. However, this caused the other World Tree experts to self-destruct even more decisively. Several of them even self-destructed while hugging a Beyond Grade A in an attempt to kill their opponent. With the death of the subduing Tree King, the scales of the high-level combatants completely tilted towards the three universal civilizations. Flames of self-destruction lit up the battlefield. Not long after, the last Holy Tree emissary self-destructed and died. Only then did the Beyond grade as retreat from the battlefield and return to the formation behind the three universal civilizations. Almost everyone was injured. Simon walked up to him and exhaled. His expression was respectful. "Thank you for your hard work. You guys can rest first. However, the mechanic still has to provide technical support." "Okay." Han Shao nodded. The battle was still going on, but what came next was the work of the main fleet. The mission of these high-level combatants was basically completed. Simon continued, "It's all thanks to you guys this time. We won a complete victory at the high-level combatants level and killed more than 100 Beyond grade as from the World Tree. We'll talk about this officially after the battle." After that, he turned back to the command platform and continued to control the battle. He could not leave for the time being. The Beyond grade as exchanged glances and remained silent. Because of Aurora and Black Star, they only paid the price of 6 Beyond grade as to eliminate more than 100 Beyond grade as from the World Tree. Just from the perspective of the battle losses, it was indeed a complete victory. However, life was not a number. Thinking about how their 6 companions were chatting together not long ago, many Beyond grade as felt sad for them. Someone else was sacrificed this time, but the World Tree would always make a comeback. Would I be the next one to die? Similar thoughts appeared in everyone's minds. Although they had placed their hopes on Han Zhao's sanctum revival, no one dared to guarantee that it would not happen until it was their turn. Many people were filled with emotions and worry about the uncertainty of the future. Han Zhao looked back and saw everyone's expressions. He said, "Aurora, you did well this time. If not for you, our losses might have reached more than half." Hearing this, everyone turned to look at Aurora. Most of them had gratitude in their eyes. No matter what, most of them had been saved by Aurora more than once today, and owed her a favor. "I was just doing my duty." Aurora took a deep breath and imitated Han Zhao's modesty. Her face was rather pale. This high-intensity battle had squeezed out too much of her life energy, and she was almost out of milk. Hela felt a little heartache, but there was no expression on her face. Han Zhao patted Aurora's shoulder, looked at everyone and said, "This battle will take at least a few days. Everyone is injured. Go and rest first." Hearing this, no one declined and left with their own thoughts, leaving only the direct Beyond grade as Manison, Kasuyi, and the other important members of the association. Manison looked at the 4 spacetime amber at the side. There were 4 World Tree experts sealed inside. "What do you plan to do with these 4? Seal them first and store them in the interception circle. I'll leave a throne here to supervise them." Han Zhao pondered. He had succeeded 4 times in using the spacetime amber, and he had relied on the huge difference in strength to forcefully control the target before sealing them with the spacetime amber. Therefore, the 4 high-level combatants of the World Tree that he had captured were all ordinary Beyond grade as. There had been dozens of similar failures, and these were the rare 4 successful cases. The executive officer of the World Tree, the 13 ancestral spirits, and the army commander were all very strong and very troublesome to deal with. They self-destructed too decisively, and there was no way to capture them. The 6 Beyond grade as on his side were mainly killed by the self-destruction tactic of the World Tree. The deceased were all ordinary or fragile Beyond grade as. They died on the spot, and Aurora could not save them in time. Although he had won the battle between the high-level combatants, Han Zhao also fully felt how difficult it was to deal with the World Tree experts. It was not just their strength, but their synchronized mental network and fearless mentality were the most troublesome parts. Even though he had many advantages now, the battle-hardened World Tree was still not easy to deal with. He had his methods, but the other party also had various countermeasures. Although the spacetime amber has already proven its characteristics, we still have to prevent the World Tree from cracking its principles. What we can't do, the World Tree might be able to do. Manison nodded. He did not dare to be arrogant and say that the World Tree would not be able to crack the spacetime amber. To him, this was an unknown. Han Zhao did not say anything. He turned to look at Hela and gave her a look. Seeing this, Hela nodded slightly. This was the secret signal between the two of them. Seeing Hela's performance, Han Zhao knew that Hela had been using the underworld to collect the souls of the dead. She should have gained a lot, but now was not the time to check. World Tree, Han Zhao turned around and looked at the battle that was still ongoing. A strange light flashed in his eyes. Our high-level combatants have won a complete victory. Only 6 people died. Black Star even used the spacetime amber to capture 4 captives. In the joint conference room of the 3 universal civilizations, the 3 leaders were receiving the frontline battle reports in real time and discussing softly from time to time. Black Star is still as strong as ever. Fortunately, he has the help of the association. Otherwise, the direct descendants wouldn't have been able to deal with so many enemies. Lewis shook his head. Only 6 people died in battle. The battle results are better than I expected. Marbruce exhaled. After destroying this wave of attacks from the World Tree, their next wave shouldn't come so soon. It's bought us more time. The ethereal Pope nodded. Although the 3 of them had the intention of exhausting the associations beyond grade as, they were still focused on a common enemy. Seeing that their losses were low, they were also happy. However, Hela's underworld is collecting the souls of our soldiers. This is a problem, Lewis said with a deep voice. Now is not the time to care about this. Marbruce lowered his voice. The existence of the underworld was no longer a secret. The 3 universal civilizations had already known about it before the war. They knew that Hela might absorb their dead soldiers and talents in the war, but in the current situation, they had no choice but to turn a blind eye. Although this was suspected of poaching, a large number of soldiers would have died in battle. After entering the underworld, they would still have a chance to recover, which was equivalent to reducing the loss of their war capital. Now that it was a special situation, the 3 universal civilizations could only acquiesce. The 3 of them were also worried that Hela would use the underworld to take away the dead beyond grade as, but at the moment, not many beyond grade as were willing to become heroic spirits without freedom. Most of them chose to believe in the Sanctum revival. However, no matter what, this was a hidden danger. However, now was not the time to care about it. Dealing with the World Tree civilization was the main problem, and the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations could not do anything about it. The 2 fleets had been fighting for 6 to 7 days, and the battle line had been stretched extremely long. The reinforcements of the 3 universal civilizations were endless, and the beyond grade as who had finished recuperating would attack together from time to time, causing the battle to gradually lean towards the 3 universal civilizations. The World Tree Expeditionary Army was nibbled away in batches, and when the situation was not good, they changed their tactics and no longer attacked head-on. Instead, they spread out and tried to create loopholes in the interception net with their huge numbers. At this stage of the war, the World Tree's attack had already failed. To the 3 universal civilizations, the only thing left was to clean up the mess. Although they had defeated the enemy with low losses and won the battle, the upper echelons could not be happy. The revival of the World Tree loomed over their hearts. However, no matter how heavy their hearts were, the officers still had to command their troops to clean up the mess. Seeing that the dust had settled, the 3 universal civilizations finally sent the frontline battle report back to the Galactic Society, announcing their victory and boosting the morale of the people. Chapter 1361. It was not a secret that the 3 universal civilizations had resisted the first wave of foreign invasion in the intercepting circle. They had already let the Galactic Society know when they mobilized the various armies and armed forces. Because this battle was not broadcasted live, no information was sent back. After many days of fermentation, countless galactic residents heading to the central area of the explored universe were on tenterhooks, afraid that they would wake up the next day and see the news of the 3 universal civilizations' defeat. In the atmosphere of the entire Galactic Society, the Foreign Affairs Department of the 3 universal civilizations, which had been silent for many days, finally broadcasted the results of the frontline battle to the Galactic Society, announcing this great victory. The 3 universal civilizations claimed that the attacks of the foreign enemies had been repelled and released a more detailed battle report, publicizing the loss ratio of many troops. The most eye-catching of all was the results of the high-level combatants. With just 6 people as the price, they had killed more than 100 beyond grade as. This battle record made countless people's eyes light up. Although the 3 universal civilizations had won the battle, they had also lost billions of fleet. Even so, it was still a praiseworthy victory. The loss was far lower than the enemy's, but the loss ratio at the beyond grade A level was several times better. They were the troops with the lowest loss ratio, outshining the rest. Successfully wiping out the expeditionary army, this great victory greatly boosted the people's morale. Most of the galactic residents who had been frightened heaved a sigh of relief. The panic and fear in their hearts gradually faded, and they were filled with excitement and joy. The public opinion that was originally filled with all kinds of worry and panic changed unanimously, turning into a trend of praising the three universal civilizations. It was as if there were loyal supporters everywhere overnight. The amazing battle record of the Beyond Grade, as was naturally a hot topic of discussion among ordinary people, and they were almost unanimously praised. Many galactic residents praised their own individual strength for being quite reliable, as if they had forgotten the hate speech they had made against the association in the past. The association seemed to have gone from an opposing class that abused its privileges as it pleased to a trustworthy guardian of the galactic society, and its image underwent a 180-degree change. During the internal conflicts, many galactic residents did not like the Beyond Grade as and never stopped picking on them. However, when facing a great victory of the foreign enemies, the galactic residents felt proud of the excellence of their high-level combatants. The long-accumulated resentment and hatred seemed to have been selectively forgotten, and their attitude changed very smoothly. Of course, there were also groups of people with deep-rooted resentment. However, at present, they were all cowering and did not dare to voice their usual opinions. They shrunk their necks and quietly accepted the protection with a clear conscience. Now that the enemy had not retreated, they did not dare to put down their chopsticks and curse. However, for most of the galactic residents, when danger came, they would cheer for whoever protected them from invasion. The unity of the outside world temporarily suppressed the internal class conflict. A great victory, Dylan disagreed. The huge virtual screen played the news report of the three universal civilizations. The room was filled with revivers who had joined the association with different expressions. Due to the previous differences, many revivers did not respond to the call and did not participate in this battle. They all stayed in the explored universe and did not know how intense the battle at the front lines was. They could only watch the battle reports through the news. 6 people sacrificed in exchange for hundreds of casualties. Normally, this would not happen. It seems like Aurora's ability has already reduced the battle losses to a very, very low level. Biger nodded. No matter how low the battle losses are, the 6 people who died in the battle are still dead. There are also association members among them. They lost their lives because they believed Black Star's nonsense. Serves them right. Dylan curled his lips. Everyone shook their heads, speechless. How could there be no deaths in a war of such intensity? The sacrifice of Beyond Grade as was inevitable, but emotionally speaking, everyone still felt that it was a pity. Don't say that. They sacrificed themselves to fight against foreign enemies. Furthermore, with Black Star's Sanctum revival, they can still be reborn. Biger sighed. Humph, so what if it's the Sanctum revival? There's only one chance. They foolishly wasted it. When they come back to life, they'll think the same as us sooner or later, Dylan said with contempt. Biger could not refute. He shook his head helplessly and said, Don't we still have the underworld as our final guarantee? TSK, do you like losing your freedom? I even suspect that Black Star urged us to participate in the war. Another goal is for us to die in battle and enter the underworld, indirectly enriching his forces. Humph, what a bad guy. Dylan clicked his tongue. Black Star shouldn't be such a person. Biger shook his head. Are you very close to him? Can you guarantee what he's thinking? Dylan said impatiently. Whose side are you on? If you like to speak up for Black Star so much, why don't you scram behind his butt? Why don't you obediently receive whatever *T he throws at you? What are you talking about? Plus, Black Star doesn't need to sh*t. Biger's mouth twitched, but he was not angry. He was already used to Dylan's foul mouth. Dylan retracted his gaze and snorted. This is only the first wave of attacks. The enemy will invade again, and more beyond grade as will die in battle. If we participate in the battle, we'll end up like this sooner or later. It wasn't easy for us to get a new life. I'm not willing to work for the 3 universal civilizations. Have you made up your mind to watch the enemy invade? Biger frowned. Humph, I'm not going to get involved in this mess. If the 3 universal civilizations win, I'll stay. If they don't win, where can I go in the universe? My elven holy kingdom is gone, and my concubines have been divided up. What's there for me to miss? Dylan scratched his nose. Fine. You're good. Biger was speechless. He shook his head and walked out of the room. After hesitating for a moment, he took out his communicator and dialed Oathkeeper's number. A few seconds later, the call went through, and Oathkeeper's face appeared on the screen. What's the matter? Biger hesitated for a moment before saying, regarding Black Star's call, I want to ask for your opinion. He was actually a little confused. After all, Dylan was not completely unreasonable. To the revivers, it was not a bad choice to stay out of trouble. However, Biger still could not make up his mind, so he wanted to ask for Oathkeeper's opinion. Oathkeeper's persistence over the years had earned the respect of all the revivers. After all, he was once a comrade with the same goal and an old friend of many years. He was very important in his heart and was far more trustworthy than Black Star. Oathkeeper also knew that the revivers did not respond to Han Zhao's call, so he understood what Biger was asking. He pondered for a moment and said, I suggest you participate in the battle and give it your all. Seeing that Biger did not speak, Oathkeeper continued, I know you're worried about the risks, but Black Star has his own plan and doesn't treat you guys as sacrifices. The underworld isn't all his trump cards. He's prepared other escape routes for you guys. Furthermore, you guys have a misconception. The compromise of the 3 universal civilizations doesn't mean that the battle between the Beyond Grade as is over. Black Star is still working hard for this goal. The enemy is an opportunity. I don't really understand. Biger frowned. It's not convenient for me to explain this matter too clearly for the time being. If you're willing to believe me, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't be afraid of death. Black Bear will always have a way to make you open your eyes again. Oathkeeper shook his head. Without Black Star's approval, it was not convenient for him to reveal the truth of the unlimited Sanctum revival. Furthermore, it would be suspicious if he said it. Facts spoke louder than words. Oathkeeper had heard Han Zhao talk about the plan and knew that Black Star needed a reviver who dared to die in battle as an example. If none of the revivers participated in the battle, Black Star would lack the material to show the truth of the Sanctum revival. However, it was not appropriate to directly ask the revivers to die. After all, even with the Sanctum revival, their strength would decrease after they were reborn. Not many people were willing to do so. People's hearts were always fickle, so he could only urge them to participate in the battle. Anyway, as long as they went to the front lines, Oathkeeper believed that Black Star would definitely be able to act as the revivers. I'll think about it. Biger hung up the communication and thought about Oathkeeper's hint. He pondered for a while before making up his mind. There must be a reason for Oathkeeper's suggestion. It was better to go to the front lines to take a look. Even if he participated in the battle, Aurora would be on the battlefield, so the danger should not be that high. In the large conference room of the Intercepting Circle's main base, many beyond grade as who participated in the battle gathered together. On the conference stage sat Simon and the other commanders, as well as the remote projections of the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations. After many days of fighting, this batch of World Tree Expedition team had already been defeated. The 3 universal civilizations only had to clean up the mess, and the three leaders descended to reward these beyond grade as. The direct beyond grade as had other internal rewards, but the rewards for the association members were different. They were basically direct material rewards. This was an agreement that Han Shao and the three universal civilizations had agreed on long ago. The association would not provide high-level combatants for free. Everyone's contributions have been recorded. According to the agreement that His Excellency Black Star has negotiated with us, we will pay you enough. These are the list of resources. Marbruce summoned the virtual screen and opened a list interface. All kinds of items that could be exchanged were displayed to everyone present. Han Shao took a look and nodded slightly. Many of the items here were strategic resources that were not open to the public under normal circumstances. This time, all of them were open to exchange and did not hide anything. This was basically the same as the players using their faction contribution points to exchange for equipment, but the difference was that the Beyond Grade as did not have an interface to display their contribution points. This time, Lewis pondered for a moment and said, "In order to show our sincerity, you can choose different universal treasures in our inventory as rewards according to your contributions. It will be the same in the future." Hearing this, the eyes of many Beyond Grade as lit up with joy. Many of them did not even have a single universal treasure, but now that they had a channel to exchange for it, they were pleasantly surprised. Even those who had universal treasures did not mind having more equipment in their hand. "Yo, you've put in a lot of effort." Han Shao raised his brows. At the very least, every Beyond Grade A participating in the battle would have one, which was not a small number. Furthermore, they would be provided with the right to exchange for it every time they fought in the future. Even if the three universal civilizations had a lot of universal treasures in their inventory, they could not afford to be so extravagant. After all, the Beyond Grade as could choose on their own, so they would definitely choose from the good ones. However, on second thought, Han Shao understood the three universal civilizations plan. Since they had to distribute universal treasures to the participants in every battle, they might as well give them away. At the same time, it would also encourage the Beyond Grade as to fight. After all, if the Beyond Grade as were gone, there was no point in keeping some universal treasures that were exclusive to individuals. In addition, the three universal civilizations might have another plan, which was to use rewards to attract the association's revivers to participate in the battle. Han Shao knew what kind of shit they were holding in. However, there was no need to stop them. Han Shao was also happy to let the three universal civilizations bleed. He could not ask the other Beyond Grade, as who had contributed to the battle, to reject this reward. That would be too unpopular. Everyone rubbed their palms and chose the universal treasures they liked from the list. However, there were also a few Beyond Grade as who made a different choice. They surrounded Aurora and smiled kindly. "We owe you a favor this time. Do you have any universal treasures you want? I can help you choose." Aurora was stunned and waved her hands. "There's no need for that. There's no need to be modest. You deserve it." Milizau's incarnation revealed a loving smile. As a huge living target, be it the enemy's hit rate or his own healer's hit rate, it was very high for him. This time, he was the happiest to be healed by Aurora. "I really don't need anything." Aurora was helpless. This was the truth. With an insane treasure like the Underworld and a boss who sold universal treasures in bulk, why would she need anything else? She really did not need the universal treasures of the three universal civilizations. The surrounding Beyond Grade as looked at her enviously, but they could understand her actions. After all, this battle had already proven that if one wanted to survive on the battlefield, a healer was the most important. Some Beyond Grade as were willing to give up the opportunity to exchange for universal treasures to please Aurora. Furthermore, this healer's healing ability was limited. If they did not build a good relationship with her, The amount of healing they received after the battle would probably not be comparable to others. Han Xiao glanced at Aurora, who was surrounded by everyone, and his mouth twitched. Tisk, so this is what it means to have milk is mother. After complaining in his heart, Han Xiao retracted his gaze and casually looked at the list. He did not feel anything. He had a deep foundation now, so he did not care too much about the universal treasures provided by the three universal civilizations. His thoughts had already drifted away. The main storyline mission of this battle had already been completed. Although it was a drop in the bucket for him, the EXP reward this time was very generous. Countless army players had received a large wave of EXP, which was the greatest benefit for him. The sooner the players reached the max level, the sooner they could spend their EXP elsewhere, increasing their EXP gain speed. Han Zhao's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. After repelling the enemy this time, a large number of high-level combatants will need time to revive. With me here, the World Tree probably won't dare to send foreign experts over, so their next wave of attacks won't arrive so soon. Should I take this opportunity to make a trip to the Sanctum? The flow of time in the Sanctum was different from that in the main universe. The last time he entered the third Sanctum, it took him 3 months. Even if his authority in the first Sanctum was higher, it would probably take him a lot of time. Taking advantage of the fact that the World Tree was not invading, it was a good opportunity to enter the Sanctum. There was a high chance that he would not miss anything. Han Xiao planned to enter the Sanctum this time, not only to revive the 6 victims. There were still many beyond grade as waiting to be revived in history, such as the direct descendants of the 3 universal civilizations and the Supercluster Alliance. This was a deal that he had agreed to. When the World Tree revived the high-level combatants, he had to expand the number of experts on his side. It's a pity that the revivers did not participate in this war. Otherwise, I would have been able to reveal the truth of the Sanctum revival. However, it's fine if I don't expose it now. The war is still in its early stages. If I expose it too early, it might cause the 3 universal civilizations to have other thoughts. When the 2 sides can't split their attention, it might be the best time to expose it. Han Xiao had a thought. However, he still had to use Destiny's Child to monitor and confirm that the World Tree would not take any further action in the short term. Only then could he enter the Sanctum with ease. On the other side, in the World Tree Civilization's territory, the Tree King Palace, 4 high-level combatants have been captured alive. The mental network has been disconnected. Although the World Tree connection still exists, we can't monitor their status. The second executive officer was expressionless as he reported the situation of the 4 World Tree experts sealed in amber. Heart Tree King narrowed his eyes and revealed an interested expression. Interesting. Does the enemy this time have such a method to capture them alive? It's not simple. It might be a special item like a space wonder. Can it track their location? Yes, the connection power of the mother tree is still being transmitted to the individual, but it's being isolated by something unknown. It can't seep in, so we can't sense the situation of the 4 people. Following the interrupted information state, we can confirm that the coordinates of the 4 people are near the Expeditionary Army battlefield. Let's try to snatch them back next time. Let's see what captured them alive, and throw them into the mother tree for analysis. Heart Tree King waved his hand. When will the next step begin? The executive officer asked. There's no rush. The other party's recovery type Esper is very troublesome, causing the exchange to be ineffective this time. However, no matter how low the battle results are, it's still an exchange. The enemy has permanently lost a few high-level combatants, so we still have the advantage. Heart Tree King rubbed the armrest and paused for a moment before continuing. Let's wait for our high-level combatants to revive first. Now, let's plan how to get rid of that recovery type Esper. If we don't kill this person, our tactics will be greatly reduced. If the exchange really doesn't work, Then let's not waste any more time and directly launch an all-out attack. As long as we enter their territory, the mother tree will be able to eat to its heart's content. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.